Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 676. Death of Kurosaki Makotao. Over the past 100 years, the only person that Senju Makotao has never dared to underestimate is Aizen Sasuke. It is precisely because of this that Senju Makotao's understanding of the ability of Kagami Water Moon is by no means comparable to that of others. Illusion is always based on reality. If there is no reality, then illusion will be meaningless. As for what Aizen Sasuke's definition of reality is at this moment, Senju Makotao is very clear. It is the spirit particle that he left in Kagami Water Moon 100 years ago. It took 100 years, or it can be said that the complete fusion of the collapsing Jade and Kagami Water Moon, but Aizen Sasuke finally found the location of the spirit particle. Then, the spirit particle was defined as reality by Aizen Sasuke. It is precisely because of this that the scenes that Senju Makotao and Unohana saw are actually completely different. Since the spirit was originally a part of Senju Makotao's body, it also led to Senju Makotao being defined as real in a sense, so that those illusions that made countless Shinigami fall for Senju Makotao were completely meaningless to him. But, in this way, I'm afraid that even if Urahara Kisuke's various instruments were smoked, he probably wouldn't have thought that Aizen Sasuke would safely put the only weakness of Kagami Suijutsu on someone else, right? However, this made Senju Makotao look up to Aizen Sasuke even more. Aizen Sasuke's approach undoubtedly greatly increased Senju Makotao's trust in him, and he also thoroughly felt the sincerity from Aizen Sasuke. Unohana-sensei, it seems that Aizen-kun's side is going much more smoothly than expected. Next, you need to make some preparations according to the plan. Senju Makotao said. Okay, I understand. Unohana stood up, nodded, and then asked. Makotao, what about the identity of Kurosaki Makotao? Kurosaki Makotao? Didn't he die under the sword of Aizen Sasuke? Senju Makotao asked back. So, I understand. Unohana heard this, and there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Then, Unohana turned around and quickly went in the direction of the Shinigami and Seireitei who were fighting hard with Yulu's Helio. The final stage is about to be prepared, so the farce in the Kyukyou Palace, naturally should be ended first, otherwise if he fails to appear in time at the right time and the right place, it will undoubtedly be a waste of Senju Makotao's careful planning. With the departure of Unohana, Senju Makotao's figure also disappeared directly in the original place in the form of spirit particle, and quickly traveled through the Kyukyou Palace without anyone noticing, and soon arrived at the palace where Aizen Sasuke usually lived. As for Senju Makotao's goal of coming here, it is naturally to find the location of Zaraki Fire. In order to stop the troublesome Yulu's Heli, either Makotao Senju used spiritual control to forcibly deprive Yulu's Heli of the control of the part of the spirit that Yulu's Heli manipulated, or it could only be stopped by the master, Futeya Zaraki. In addition, even if it is as strong as Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni and Unohana, it is almost impossible to defeat or kill Yulu's Heli in the Soul Society or Huko Mundo. Otherwise, the 13th Division of the Gotti would not have been helpless against the defected Futeya Zaraki, and in the end, Futeya Zaraki surrendered and was sentenced to hell. As for the location of Futeya Zaraki, Aizen Sasuke did not tell Makotao Senju specifically. Just as Makotao Senju did not specifically propose any details of the plan to Aizen Sasuke, he demanded that Aizen Sasuke's knife, which was chopped at some of his Shinigami friends, deviate to the left by a certain number of centimeters. For smart people like Aizen Sasuke and Senju Makotao, as long as they know the specific goal, they will naturally guide the result to that goal perfectly. This can be regarded as a kind of tacit understanding between Senju Makotao and Aizen Sasuke. Walking in the palace where Aizen Sasuke lives, Senju Makotao's thought moved, and he took in all the spirit particles in the entire palace. Yulu's Helio was unable to rescue Zaraki Fire by himself, which only means that the place where Zaraki Fire was sealed is a place that spirit particles cannot reach. As long as this condition is inferred, then, Senju Makotao's figure once again transformed into spirit particles and quickly traveled through the palace, heading towards the deepest part of the palace, where there was an area like a black hole in the spirit particle world. Soon, a door similar to a laboratory appeared in front of Senju Makotao. At the same time, Kachikabyakura, Hisajishi and Grimjow were fighting hard together, holding on to the seemingly endless attack of Yulu's Helio. In addition, the Kido level of Matsumoto Ranjaiku and Izanane was definitely at the level of the 4th Division commander, But facing the serious injuries of Seireitei, Haribel and Nell, they could only barely maintain it from getting worse. The situation was undoubtedly at its worst. At this moment, a pure sword swept across in front of Kachika and others, shattering a large number of spirit particles that were intended to form various things to launch attacks. The next moment, Unohana appeared with a zanpakutō in his hand, with a stern expression and a strong murderous intent spreading. He blocked Kachika and other injured people behind him and looked directly in the direction of Unohana. Captain Unohana. At this moment, the appearance of Unohana was like a powerful reinforcement from heaven to Kachika and others, and they all subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. However, Kachika soon reacted and asked hurriedly, "Captain Unohana, how is Mr. Kurosaki Makotao?" Before Makotao Senju fell from the dome with blood on his body, and then Unohana quickly ran towards that position. Kachika and others had undoubtedly seen it all. However, at this moment, only Unohana showed up, but he was unable to sense the spiritual pressure belonging to Makotao Senju, which undoubtedly made Kachika feel bad. "I tried my best, but it's too late." When saying this, Unohana voice was a little low and helpless, which also explained why he had been so slow to rush here from the forest to provide support. However, this result was undoubtedly a very sad ending for the Shinigami such as Kachika. Although Makotao Kurosaki broke into the Seireitei of travel disaster at the beginning, his position was opposite to that of the Gotti 13. However, since the contact during this period, coupled with the fact that Kurosaki Makotao has repeatedly solved major crises for the Seireitei, many Shinigami regard Kurosaki Makotao as a companion. Moreover, the reason why Kurosaki Makotao broke into the Hukomundo this time was to take back Nell and the soul of Senju Makotao. For a time, even someone as arrogant as Kachika felt deep sorrow and guilt in his heart. Chapter 677 I'm a friendly force. Don't show that useless weak expression. Unohana voice suddenly rang out. Unlike the gentle tone in the past, Unohana voice was full of determination and decisiveness, which shocked the faces of the Shinigami present. The war is not over yet. Our battle is far from over. Don't forget what our goal is to go to Hukomundo, and don't forget that Aizen Sasuke's already led a large army to the real world. If you want to give up now, it's too early. If you don't have the courage to swing your sword towards hell, you shouldn't have followed me into Hukomundo. At this moment, Unohana back seemed to slowly become noble, like a beautiful flower slowly blooming in the soil of despair, bringing everyone a glimmer of hope, and completely becoming the last pillar of the Shinigami present. However, Hyuu's offensive will not stop at all, and he will not be merciful to the Shinigami. For Hyuu, the meaning of everything is based on Zaraki. Perhaps, due to the identity of Zaraki as a god of death, Hyuu would have a certain good impression of the gods of death, but in the face of the choice of Zaraki's life, die. Hyuu manipulated a large number of spirit particles to simulate objects again, and countless attacks attacked Unohana and the other gods of death from all directions. However, at this moment, Unohana body completely turned into a residual image, and countless sword lights bloomed wildly. The ultimate sword art, countless school secrets, made the countless attacks launched by Hyuu become ridiculous things under Unohana sword. Moreover, when Unohana solved the dilemma of the other gods of death in an instant, his figure quickly moved towards Hyuu's position. Subconsciously, Hyuu raised his hand to create dozens of spirit particle shields in front of him. However, this fighting method that was extremely similar to Senju Makotao was as immature as a child in front of Unohana who had been sparring with Senju Makotao for a long time. In just a moment, dozens of extremely hard spirit shields turned into countless fragments. The merciless knife light slashed across Hyuu's chest, instantly splitting Hyuu in two. Suddenly, the continuous attack on the death god stagnated, as if it had lost control of Hyuu and quickly began to dissipate into spirit particles again. However, Unohana knew that the battle was not over. The body of Hyuu that was cut apart quickly dissipated, and then in the air 100 meters away from Unohana, a large number of spirit particles combined and slowly formed the figure of Hyuu again. It's really difficult. Unohana said. That can't be helped. This is my ability. Spirit particles are both my body and my weapon. Hyuu replied calmly. It doesn't matter, then let me cut you until you don't want to appear in front of me again. Unohanaretsu's calm and absolute voice sounded as if announcing a certain future, but, at this moment, Captain Unohana, please stop. A voice that seemed to have no emotion rang in the ears of all the Shinigami and Aaron Saber at the same time. Zaraki Fire. The nobleman, who was very similar to Byakuya Kachiki in temperament, but whose face seemed to have no emotion, slowly appeared in front of Unohanaretsu. The former captain of the 11th Division, the 8th generation Kenpachi, Zaraki Fire. In an instant, the identity information of Zaraki Fire also quickly emerged in the minds of the Shinigami. Moreover, when Aizen Sasuke betrayed Soul Society, Zaraki Fire escaped from the infernal hell and assisted Aizen Sasuke in breaking free from the Kid Barrier blockade and heading to Hukomundo at the Double Dead Hill. These signs undoubtedly made the GOTY 13th Division judge Zaraki Fire as an extremely evil person who was entangled with Aizen Sasuke. And just when Unohanaretsu seemed to be unaware and regarded Zaraki Fire as an enemy and swung his sword away, Zaraki Fire said expressionlessly, "Captain Unohana, I'm not an enemy." Unohanaretsu's blade stopped less than a centimeter away from the forehead of the unresisting Zaraki Fire. Then, Zaraki Fire waved in the direction of Uruhilu. Suddenly, Uruhilu, with a look of ecstasy on his face, instantly dissipated into the air and returned to Zaraki Fire's zanpakutō sword spirit. "I'm sorry that Uruhilu has caused trouble to everyone." Zaraki Fire apologized and explained. "However, it was also because Aizen Sasuke imprisoned and sealed me, and threatened me with my life, that Uruhilu had to obey Aizen Sasuke's orders." "You mean, you and Aizen Sasuke fell out?" Unohanaretsu asked cooperatively, with just the right amount of doubt in his tone. "No." Zaraki Fire shook his head and spoke calmly. "From the beginning, my cooperation with Aizen Sasuke was to take back the soul of Vice Captain Senju." Instantly, not only did Unohanaretsu show shock and confusion on his face, but the other Shinigami were also confused. Friendly forces? What do you mean? Unohanaretsu asked. "I was sealed in the infernal hell for hundreds of years. In fact, I have been watching all the changes in the Seireitei. However, due to the suppression of the zanpakutō power by the infernal hell, I can't actively communicate with anyone in the Seireitei." The unskilled Zaraki Futaro repeated it without emotion as if he was reading a script. However, because Zaraki Futaro originally had the appearance of a three-no nobleman with an expressionless face, the other Shinigami could not tell whether Zaraki Futaro was lying or not. The only exception is Vice Captain Senju. Perhaps due to his unique zanpakutō ability, he has the ability to communicate with me directly through spirit particles, which makes Vice Captain Senju my only good friend in the Seireitei. And because I was watching everything in the Seireitei all the time, I was the first to know that Vice Captain Senju was murdered by Aizen Sasuke. However, I can't actively influence everything in the Seireitei, nor can I tell you the truth. More importantly, I know that Vice Captain Senju's soul was fused into a certain Aaron Saber in Hukomundo. Therefore, when the aftermath of the battle between Ishirai and Captain Meguri Kurosaki caused the seal of the Inferno to weaken, I escaped from the Inferno and found Aizen Sasuke. Later, I pretended to cooperate with Aizen Sasuke and followed Aizen Sasuke to the Hukomundo, just to confirm the whereabouts of the soul of my friend Vice Captain Senju. Chapter 678. Your time is over. Chapter 678. Your time is over. The emotionless statement of Zaraki Fire made the present Shinigami doubtful. "So, you are lurking beside Aizen Sasuke for Makoto-kun?" Kachika Byakuya's tone revealed a bit of disbelief. "That's right." Zaraki Fire nodded and replied. "But due to an accident, my actions were discovered by Aizen Sasuke, and then sealed by Aizen Sasuke." "What proof do you have?" Unohanaretsu's tone was still a bit doubtful. "I don't need your trust, as long as you don't obstruct my actions," Zaraki Fire said, and turned his eyes to look in the direction of the unconscious Nell, and said, "Vice Captain Senju's soul has been fused into Nell's body, and I have also found a way to separate Vice Captain Senju's soul again in the Palace of the Night. As long as Captain Unohana can help me a little, it will be fine." At this moment, the position expressed by Zaraki Futaba made the Shinigami present hesitate. In the eyes of these Shinigami who can be regarded as the new generation, they don't know much about Zaraki Futaba. They only know that he is the former captain of the 11th Division and a very dangerous existence imprisoned in the hell. However, such an existence that was previously regarded as a great enemy by the GOTY 13 Division is now a strong support left by Makoto for the GOTY 13 Division. This makes these Shinigami who have a close relationship with Makoto Senju feel unreal. However, the facts are in front of them. Not to mention that everything Zaraki Futaba stated is self-consistent in logic, emotion, and behavior. More importantly, when Aizen Sasuke has already gone to Karakura town to fight against the Gotti 13th Division, this deception is of little significance. As for whether to trust this dangerous person, Furuya Zaraki, the other Shinigami exchanged glances with each other and unconsciously looked in the direction of Unohana Retsu. At this moment, Unohana Retsu has undoubtedly become the backbone of them. Unohana Retsu pondered for a moment and said, "In this case, I hope Captain Zaraki will not let me down. I just want to save my friend." The answer of Furuya Zaraki was still so calm, and then he said, "However, before separating the soul of Vice Captain Senju, we need to return to the Seireitei to retrieve the spirit of Vice Captain Senju." "That's no problem. Makoto's spirit has been kept intact by me in the courtyard of the 4th Division, and the Kido barrier has been maintained for decades to ensure the activity of Makoto's spirit." Unohana Retsu replied, "I know, and it is precisely because I know that Captain Unohana has not given up for decades that I know that it is possible to save Vice Captain Senju," said Furuya Zaraki. The communication between Unohana Retsu and Zaraki Futaba also made the eyes of Shinigami such as Kachika Byakuya, Hisajishi and Matsumoto Rangiku really ignite hope. In any case, the goal of going to Hukomundo this time is about to be achieved. Suddenly, Kachika Byakuya thought of something and said with some worry, "It's just that if we want to return to Soul Society from Hukomundo, we can only contact the Technology Development Bureau to open and maintain the gate for us across the distance. I just don't know what the situation is like in Karakura town, and whether Captain Mayuri Kurosachi can spare his energy." Zaraki Futaba said in a calm tone, "Don't worry about this. Aizen Sasuke has also developed a special gate in the Hukomuni Palace so that he, as a Shinigami, does not need to rely entirely on the Seireitei to open the Black Chamber." Immediately, the Shinigami, including Unohana Retsu, couldn't help but show a little more joy on their faces. In this way, it is undoubtedly the biggest problem on the surface that has been solved, which also makes the Shinigami's previous statement of Zaraki Futaba more credible. Then, Unohana Retsu personally treated the injuries of Harable, Grimjow and other Aranseis, and the rest of the Shinigami also hurriedly treated their injuries. Then, under the leadership of Zaraki Futaba, the Shinigami headed by Unohana Retsu could not wait to go to the gate hidden in the Palace of the Night, preparing to return to the Seireitei first. As for supporting Karakura town, there is no doubt that after one hard battle after another, except for Unohana Retsu who was in good condition, the rest of the Shinigami had little combat power left. Instead, returning to the Seireitei first to recover while confirming the battle situation in Karakura town was the right choice. At the same time, appearing in the world, under the gaze of all the Shinigami, Aizen Sasuke seemed to want everyone to see this moment clearly, and slowly pulled out the zanpakutō that pierced Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni bit by bit. Blood gushed out from Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's burly chest bit by bit. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's oppressive spiritual pressure also began to drop visibly with the flow of blood. In the process of Aizen Sasuke completely pulling out the mirror flower water moon, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni did not react at all, as if he had no perception of all this. In the past, the biggest flaw in the illusion created by the mirror flower water moon was the reality represented by the mirror flower water moon blade itself. Therefore, this also made Aizen Sasuke use the ability of the mirror flower water moon in the battle, which occasionally seemed a bit useless. Once it is not possible to kill with one blow, then the moment the opponent's body touches the mirror flower water moon, all illusions will be invalid. However, now that the transformed mirror flower water moon has undoubtedly no longer had this concern, the object who is deeply trapped in the ability of mirror flower water moon, all the appearance, form, quality, touch, smell and even the various hormones secreted by its own spirit body can be perfectly manipulated by Aizen Sasuke. Therefore, your time is over, Captain Yamamoto. Aizen Sasuke announced calmly, slowly raising the Kagami in his hand, and pointing the blade directly at Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, who still had no reaction to the outside world, as if he was going to cut Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni in two in the next moment. It seemed that he was going to bury the strongest god of death who had stood in the Soul Society for 1,000 years. Perhaps, in the eyes of Aizen Sasuke, it was not an important matter to kill Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni or not, but since it was paving the way for Makoto to control the Seireitei, then, please stop here, Mr. Seireitei. This scene also made the surrounding god of death tear their eyes and shout subconsciously, Captain-in-Chief. Stop, Aizen Sasuke, hurry. At an instant, a large number of Shinigami rushed towards Aizen Sasuke almost at the same time, trying to stop Aizen Sasuke. Chapter 679 The Right Arm of the Spiritual King. However, before the Shinigami approached Aizen Sasuke, the 10 Spartas, including Stark, Byakugan, Ulquiorra, who still had some fighting power, attacked and stopped the Shinigami. And a big melee started again. Aizen Sasuke glanced at the many Shinigami who were in despair, and the Kagami water moon in his hand suddenly slashed towards Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. As long as Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni was killed, then, the remaining people who might oppose Makao are just scapees, and all the suspected opponents can be killed. Hulala! At this moment, a golden chain suddenly emerged from the surrounding space and suddenly wrapped around the Kagami water moon that was about to cut Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni. What? Aizen Sasuke was slightly startled, and looked up at a corner on the side. Catch up, catch up. Yukito Jushiro's weak voice, which was difficult to conceal, slowly rang out on the battlefield. At this moment, Yukito Jushiro no longer looked like a weak and gentle gentleman. Instead, he was naked from the waist up, with strange totems with black eyes on his fair skin. He held a wooden shield and a wooden spear in his hands. Several chains extended from the surface of the wooden shield and inserted into the empty air in front of him, faintly echoing the chains wrapped around the mirror flower and water moon. Yukito Jushiro, Aizen Sasuke slowly said the name, with a trace of solemnity in his eyes, and said, "So, have you finally made up your mind to use the power that belongs to the king?" As expected, Aizen Sasuke, you are also quite clear about my secrets. Yukito Jushiro's figure seemed to be obviously shriveled and thinner than before, but the spiritual pressure emanating from his body was far beyond comparison in the past. Of course I know, the right arm of the Soul King, Yukito Jushiro. Aizen Sasuke replied indifferently. As a man who constantly searches for his equal in the unbearable loneliness, how could Aizen Sasuke ignore the existence of Yukito Jushiro in the past? Aizen Sasuke noticed the difference of Yukito Jushiro from the beginning, and then repeatedly tried, contacted and compared various information about Yukito Jushiro. However, to Aizen Sasuke's regret, Yukito Jushiro's specialness is entirely due to the existence of the Soul King's right arm in his body. Compared with those who only have a little fragment of the full-bring ability, Yukito Jushiro has a complete arm of the Soul King. However, Yukito Jushiro's spirit body can't really bear the Soul King's right arm, which makes Yukito Jushiro, who is obviously a veteran captain, weak all day long and often falls ill in bed. What makes Aizen Sasuke even more disappointed is Yukito Jushiro's thoughts. He completely regards himself as a container for the Soul King's right arm to temporarily reside. That willing and corrupt mentality made Aizen Sasuke laugh. Now, just using a little bit of the power of the Soul King's right arm has further weakened himself to this state, which really makes Aizen Sasuke disdain it. If the Soul King's right arm falls into his or Makao's hands, if we put ourselves in their shoes, he and Makao will never be willing to be a container. Analyze that arm, study that arm, possess that arm, and then find a way to collect and completely possess all the body and power of the Soul King. This is probably the path that Makao and I will take. So, Captain Yukito thinks that you can stop me with that power? Aizen Sasuke said with undisguised arrogance in his tone. It's not a thought, it's a must. Yukito Jushiro looked at Aizen Sasuke and said with a firm tone. Captain Aizen knows that I have the Soul King's right arm, but I guess you don't know what power the Soul King's right arm controls, right? Power. As soon as these words came out, Aizen Sasuke's expression became a little more solemn. As his thoughts spread, he quickly reacted. Since a full-bringer can have various special abilities with just a tiny fragment of the Soul King, then Yukito Jushiro, who has the complete Soul King's right arm in his body, must have a more powerful and special power. Yes, the power controlled by the Soul King's right arm is called. Yukito Jushiro's eyes were rarely sharp, and he spoke loudly. Stillness. Stillness. This term full of concepts, when extended to the actual power it represents, is undoubtedly extremely large in scope. Suddenly, Aizen Sasuke realized something and suddenly lowered his head to look at Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni in front of him. I saw that another golden chain also penetrated through the void and inserted into Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni's body. The next moment, Aizen Sasuke almost instinctively stepped back. At the same time, Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni, who was originally trapped in the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons, suddenly moved, and his majestic eyes were filled with the spirit of suppressing everything. The Zanpaku, which was equivalent to the core of the sun, drew a perfect arc and slashed towards Aizen Sasuke. La la. However, under the restraint of the chain, Aizen Sasuke's movements were undoubtedly a bit slower, and he could only watch the Zanpaku slash through. There was no blood. In other words, under the extreme temperature of the zanpakutō, the blood completely turned into nothingness the moment it came into contact with the zanpakutō. And Aizen Sasuke's body was also split into two under this blow. You were careless, Aizen Sasuke. Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni seemed to have expected this result. His eyes under his white eyebrows looked at Aizen Sasuke, who was shocked. However, the shock only lasted for a moment, and Aizen Sasuke's expression returned to his calm and arrogant expression. The spirits that were cut by the zanpakutō seemed to have such an force and quickly closed together, as if the injuries that were completely fatal to ordinary Shinigami and Seireitei had never appeared. Aizen Sasuke looked at Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's condition and asked slowly. Indeed, this scene is beyond my expectation. Captain General Yamamoto's injuries seem to be completely fixed in place. Is this the power of stillness? But how did you get rid of the power of mirror flowers and water moon? Because the illusion created by mirror flowers and water moon has also been stilled. If I can't even see through the illusion of stillness, then I would be too ashamed of Shisaro's sacrifice. As Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni spoke, his body was once again covered with the remaining sun prison robe. Chapter 680. No nor disappearance. Kill. Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni shouted. His body bathed in fire approached Aizen Sasuke again. The extreme heat seemed to turn everything into ashes. Immortal. Aizen, then let me turn everything of yours into ashes, and see how you can recover. In an instant, the temperature of the entire Karakura town, which had been slowly dropping, began to soar again, and Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, who was almost like a human sun, approached Aizen Sasuke. Seeing this, Aizen Sasuke frowned and suddenly pulled the Kijika Suigetsu in his hand, trying to cut off the chain that was wrapped around Kijika Suigetsu. However, the chain seemed to be a void, and it seemed to be some kind of rule that was forcibly given. Aizen Sasuke could clearly feel the various resistances from the chain, but he could not cut the chain directly. Without the Kijika Suigetsu to resist the extremely high temperature of the zanpakutō, even Aizen Sasuke, whose spirit has now surpassed the level of the god of death, will be completely reduced to ashes in an instant. The 81st way of binding. Danko. Aizen Sasuke raised his finger and released Dank in front of Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni. After a slight obstruction, he aimed his attack at Yukitijushiro without hesitation. The 90th way of breaking. Black coffin. In an instant, another black coffin of astonishing size suddenly appeared on the battlefield, covering an area of nearly 100 meters centered on Yukitijushiro. Aizen Sasuke's understanding of Yukitijushiro is no less than that of others. When facing almost all forms of energy attacks, they will be absorbed by Yukitijushiro's zanpakutō turned to the enemy. Therefore, the invisible black coffin is the best choice to deal with Yukitijushiro. However, at the moment when the black coffin was formed, Yukitijushiro raised the wooden spear held in his other hand and suddenly poked it forward. Crack, crack, the black coffin that even Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni was forced to use the Zanra prison uniform to withstand was instantly destroyed like a still glass. Captain Aizen, it's useless. Yukitijushiro's face seemed to be getting paler and more reluctant, and he spoke to Aizen Sasuke from a distance. Move forward represents the evolution of survival, and still represents the stagnation of destruction. However, Aizen Sasuke no longer had the extra energy to answer Yukitijushiro. Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, who was completely approaching him, showed an absolute killing intent. The zanpakutō, which was equivalent to the temperature of the core of the sun, pointed directly at Aizen Sasuke's body. Once he was really hit by the zanpakutō again, and everything on his body was completely turned into ashes. Even Aizen Sasuke was not sure whether he could be resurrected under the power of the Hengyoku. Crisis. Aizen Sasuke, for the first time, felt a sense of urgency, realizing that he had always underestimated Yukitijushiro, who was willing to act as a vessel, and that he actually had the power to use the Soul King's right arm in this way. And at this moment, under the influence of the zanpakutō, the ground that had unconsciously turned into a large piece of magma suddenly exploded, and a large piece of dead wood similar to quartz broke out of the ground, forcibly separating Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni and Aizen Sasuke. Who? Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni shouted, and subconsciously looked in the direction to the side under the perception of spiritual pressure. A white and slender arm stretched out from a black cavity that had just been opened. The next moment, as the black cavity expanded, a white costume that was the same as the Tennespada appeared, with a mask on the side, and the appearance that was exposed looked no different from a human boy. Aizen Sasuke's eyes widened, and then he smiled from the heart and said, "You'll come in." "If I don't come, it looks like you're going to fall, Aizen-kun." Senju Cheng said with a somewhat helpless tone. No, it's just that it'll be much more difficult than I imagined. Just as Senju Cheng expected, Aiden Sasuke chose to be stubborn. With Kagami Suigetsu stilled and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune's injuries also stilled, Aiden Sasuke had almost no way to deal with the amazing Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune. The only possibility is that Aiden Sasuke relies on the power of the collapsing jade to delay time frantically until Yukita Jushiro's body completely collapses and can't bear the power to maintain the Spirit King's right arm. However, let's not talk about whether Aiden Sasuke could really be completely burned to ashes by the old man Yamamoto, who was completely serious before that. Even if the time is delayed to that extent, it is completely inconsistent with the plan estimated by Senju Cheng. Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune also undoubtedly sensed the amazing spiritual pressure that Senju Cheng deliberately leaked out, and asked with a more serious look. Who are you, kid? However, before Senju Cheng could speak, Aiden Sasuke spoke first with a smile on his face. This is the other king of the Kainyaku Palace, ranked no. Not among the 10 Espartas, Ashwara Kautamari, and also my true partner. Facing Aiden Sasuke's flattery, Senju Cheng chose to remain silent, and his figure flashed and appeared beside Aiden Sasuke, standing side by side, showing mystery. The appearance of Senju Cheng also attracted the attention of the other Aranses and Shinigami who were fighting. Kikushunsui's eyes flickered slightly, and turned to ask Stark, who was also looking in that direction in front of him. Mr. Stark, that can't be the no. Not you mentioned? Yes. Stark replied. He doesn't look like a special strong man, who can surpass you. Kikushunsu said with some doubt. After Senju Cheng showed up in person, Stark did not continue to hide and said directly. This kind of low-level provocation is meaningless. Lord Ashura is undoubtedly a strong man above me, whether in spiritual pressure or combat power. After a pause, Stark spoke. If Captain Kiku doesn't believe it, just go up and try it yourself and you will know. It will also give me a break. That won't work. Once Mr. Stark has time to release the hollow flash crazily, the situation will collapse. Kikushunsu teased this and continued to launch a more urgent attack on Stark, but his eyes glanced at Aiden Sasuke and Senju Cheng from time to time. It's just that Kikushunsu did not act rashly, but the other Shinigami, after briefly getting rid of his opponent, did not hesitate to attack Senju Cheng. Don't even think about obstructing the captain's battle. Chojiro Suzuki turned into a shadow and rushed straight to the battlefield, raising his zanpakutō shouting. Chapter 681. Bankai Wang Yanling leaving the palace. Chapter 681 Bankai Wang Yanling Lagom Bankai Wang Yanling Lagom. As the words rang out, a dark cloud suddenly appeared above Chojiro Suzuki's head. 11 golden lightning bolts rushed straight into the sky and gathered together, finally forming an amazing thunder and lightning canopy. And the amazing spiritual pressure that erupted from Chojiro Suzuki was far beyond the level of a vice captain, and was even not weaker than captains such as Kikushunsu and Kinpachi Zaraki. However, when Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune saw this scene, he instinctively spoke to Chojiro Suzuki. Wait, Chojiro. However, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune's order did not stop Chojiro Suzuki's determination. At this moment, Chojiro Suzuki, who knew a lot of secrets, also had a clear judgment of the situation. It was quite a stretch for Yukita Jushiro to release the power of the Spirit King's right arm. With the weakness of Yukita Jushiro's body, he could fall down at any time. At present, if you want to forcibly break the mirror flower and walk to Moon Evasion Sasuke, you can only rely on the power of the Soul King's right arm. Therefore, the key to victory or defeat lies in whether Captain Yamamoto can defeat Aiden Sasuke before Yukita Jushiro falls. The mysterious number naught who broke into the battlefield in front of him has undoubtedly become one of the variables. As an adjutant who has followed and served Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune for 1,000 years, Chojiro understands that at such a critical moment, he must not allow others to prevent Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune from defeating Aiden Sasuke. Captain, don't worry about me. If necessary, for the safety of the Seireitei and the victory of the war, it doesn't matter if you kill me as well. Chojiro, who usually shows a gentlemanly demeanor in his words and deeds, revealed absolute awareness in his words. Victory. Only victory. Otherwise, when Yukita Jushiro fell, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune's quiescent wound would return to normal again, and he would completely lose hope, and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichibune would also face failure. It was because he saw the situation clearly that Chojuro did not hesitate to release his Bankai, which he had fully mastered 1,000 years ago. As Seireitei Smash sword, as Seireitei Smash shield, it is now. Under the canopy condensed by the 11 lightning bolts, Chojuro's face showed absolute determination, and the zanpakutō in his hand pointed directly in the direction of Senju Cheng. And when he looked into Chojuro's eyes for a moment, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni also instantly understood Chojuro's meaning. What a joke, Chojuro, do you really want to fight alongside me? Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni slowly exhaled a breath and suddenly disappeared from the spot, holding the Zanpakutō in both hands, and attacked Aizen Sasuke and Senju Cheng at the same time with Suzuki Chojuro. In that case, Chojuro, I will allow you to once again show the spirit that left an indelible scar on me with your Bankai 2,000 years ago. Yes, Your Excellency Seireitei. Suzuki Chojuro lost his normal calmness after hearing this, and his whole body revealed an amazing sharpness, as if he had reproduced the spirit that constantly challenged Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni 2,000 years ago. For a moment, in the center of this battlefield, Aizen Sasuke and Senju Cheng stood side by side, sandwiched in the middle by the amazing scorching flames and lightning. However, both Aizen Sasuke and Senju Cheng were still so calm as they talked to each other. General Ching-kun, I seem to be a little excited too. Oh? Why? Did you get excited by the battle with Captain General Yamamoto? Senju Cheng answered casually. No, of course not, but it's rare to fight side by side with Yan Ching-kun. This experience is very interesting. Senju Cheng raised his eyebrows slightly and said. Be serious, this is a battle between the strongest god of death and the right arm of the Soul King. If you are defeated by mistake, it will be embarrassing. That kind of thing can't happen, because when standing on the same side with Yan Ching-kun, we're in front of, almost at the same moment, Aizen Sasuke and Senju Cheng attacked Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and Chojuro at the same time. No opponent. Boom. Facing Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who shook hands with both hands, Aizen Sasuke once again showed his amazing kendo level. Despite the restraint of Yukita Jashiro, he still blocked the attack of the Zanpakutō with the Kyuka Switchetsu fused with the Hojokyu. However, the high-temperature aftermath released by the collision of the Zanpakutō almost instantly turned the 1-kilometer area around the battlefield into a sea of fire. On the other side, the 11 lightning bolts gathered together like a canopy, and when Chojuro's Zanpakutō, which looked like a western sword, pointed at Makoto Senju, they instantly gathered on the Zanpakutō. In an instant, Chojuro's seemed to have turned into a human-shaped lightning bolt, and with the amazing stab of lightning, he appeared in front of Makoto Senju with a flash that penetrated everything. This was almost equivalent to the speed of lightning, and even Makoto Senju could not react. Hit. And the amazing stabbing speed, even Chojuro's eyes could not clearly capture every detail of the stabbing process. However, the feedback from the Zanpakutō clearly told Chojuro's the result. Suddenly, Chojuro Suzuki was delighted. With the penetrating and destructive power of Yellow Brilliant Spirit Palace, as long as it hits, it is almost unstoppable. Even Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who first fought Chojuro Suzuki, who had just mastered Bankai 2,000 years ago, could not stop it even with his wonderful swordsmanship, and even left an indelible scar on the forehead of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni. Not to mention, Chojuro Suzuki has been tempering his Bankai for 2,000 years, although Chojuro Suzuki rarely has the opportunity to really use Bankai Yellow Brilliant Spirit Palace. Only Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and Chojuro Suzuki know it. Chojuro Suzuki's stab is the fastest and most penetrating in the entire Soul Society. Lightning is speed, which is also penetrating power. Squeak, squeak, squeak. As Chojuro Suzuki stabbed, the lightning on his body was completely poured out, and the harsh sound of lightning on his body slowly subsided, allowing Chojuro Suzuki to see clearly. The next moment, Chojuro Suzuki's pupils shrank. His Bankai pressed against the throat of the young Aaron Saber in front of him, but it did not penetrate, and even blood did not ooze out. How is it possible? Chojuro Suzuki said in disbelief. In response to Chojuro Suzuki, Makoto Senju raised his palm and directly grasped the Zanpakutō against his throat. Chapter 682. The 8 Treasures Plug. Chapter 682. Bankai. Nisho Hakukusai. Chojuro Suzuki had never imagined that an Aransei would be able to block his full-strength attack with his flesh, steel skin. This was almost impossible to happen, but it suddenly appeared in front of Chojuro Suzu, so that Chojuro Suzu did not react until his zanpakutō was held by the opponent. Chojuro Suzu almost subconsciously wanted to pull his zanpakutō from Senju Makoto's hand. Lightning suddenly appeared. The 11 lightning bolts that gathered above Chojuro Suzu like a canopy fell towards Chojuro Suzu and Makoto Suzu again, carrying the power to destroy everything. There is no doubt that Chojuro Suzu's Bankai Yanling Palace is very strong. It is completely different from those fancy zanpakutō. The lightning gives Chojuro Suzu extremely powerful offensive and defensive capabilities. However, Makoto Senju's spiritual pressure was materialized and agitated. He forced the fallen lightning to be swept away by the spiritual pressure that far crushed Chojuro Suzu, and directly blasted the lightning into nothingness. Then, Senju Makoto glanced at Suzu Chojuro with his calm and cold eyes, and kicked Suzu Chojuro's legs. Puff! In an instant, Suzu Chojuro's legs turned into blood foam, and the whole person could not stop flying backwards, and the blood spilled drew an arc in the air. If it were another time and place, Senju Makoto would be very happy to see Suzu Chojuro's unique Bankai, but at this moment, Senju Makoto needs to use absolute strength to obtain a crushing victory. Therefore, Vice Captain Suzu Chojuro, lie down and rest well. Senju Makoto calmly looked at Suzu Chojuro, who finally rolled on the ground for several rounds before he was unable to stop, and said secretly in his heart, "Even for the god of death, losing legs is no different from completely losing the ability to fight. Perhaps there is still a possibility of recovery after the war, but at this moment in the battlefield, it is no different from announcing his withdrawal." The fact that Makoto Senju killed Chojuro Suzuki in a split second also made the expressions of the Shinigami who were watching the battle shudder. So strong. The terrifying and amazing spiritual pressure revealed was even higher than that of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni. As for the result of seeing his adjutant who had followed him for more than 1,000 years being kicked into blood foam and fallen to the ground with his life or death uncertain, Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni's entire body was almost visibly furious, and the powerful explosion of the Zanpakutō further suppressed Aizen Sasuke. However, Aizen Sasuke was not anxious at all, and he slowly held Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni back. If there was only Aizen Sasuke, he would need to find a way to deal with the threat from Yukita Jushiro in addition to facing the full-strength Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni. Now, the next moment, Makoto Senju appeared in front of Yukita Jushiro. Ahem. Yukita Jushiro, who was covered with black eye totems, stood up reluctantly, holding a wooden shield with chains extending into the void in one hand, and holding a wooden spear in the other hand, faintly pointing at Senju Makoto. "Mr. Seireitei, can you please not come any closer?" Yukita Jushiro's tone was gentle and elegant, and he issued an invisible threat to the mysterious no. Nor Seireitei in front of him. What made Yukita Jushiro's eyes sink was that while maintaining the state of releasing the Soul King's right hand, he could faintly feel that the person in front of him was more terrifying than Aizen Sasuke. It was for this reason that Yukita Jushiro did not act rashly, but chose to communicate. However, Senju Makoto's answer was quite direct. No. However, just as Senju Makoto's voice fell, Hirako Makoto, who had been hiding beside Yukita Jushiro, suddenly appeared, with a mysterious and playful smile on her face, and said, "It doesn't matter if it doesn't work, this distance is just right." Oh? The next moment, Hirako Mako's playful smile became mysterious, and she spoke slowly. "Bankai. Nisho Hakihuzai." With the release of Bankai, a pedestal in the shape of the Machiko flower appeared under Hirako Mako's feet. In Senju Makoto's eyes, all the cognition of everything in the world seemed to have reversed. The sky and the earth turned upside down, left and right, up and down, and even in Senju Makoto's eyes, the cognition of Yukita Jushiro changed from hostile to friendly. It seems that Mr. No. Nort has already felt it. Standing on the pedestal in the shape of the Machiko flower, Hirako Makoto spoke slowly. "What a pity. My ability is to reverse the cognition of everyone in the range except myself, regardless of friend or foe. This position just covers Mr. No. Nort and will not affect Captain Yamamoto. Now, everything has changed cognitively in your eyes, right? It's true that I am your enemy, but your enemy is not Captain Yukita or Captain Yamamoto, but Aizen Sasuke." When he said this, Hirako Mako's eyes could not help but reveal a bit of a killer light. The stronger this mysterious no. Nort is, the more advantageous it will be for Hirako Mako. Under the influence of the ability of Bankai Hakihuzai, Senju Makoto will become a friendly army to help deal with Aizen Sasuke. This is also one of the reasons why Kitajushiro specifically invited Hirako Mako to protect him. The ability of Bankai Seihakihuzai is used to force cognitive reversal, which is forced hypnosis directly from the mental level. Under this ability, even Kitajushiro has locked his mind in advance through the ability of stillness, otherwise he will also be affected by the intervention. Under the ability of Bankai Nisho Hakuhozai, Makoto Senju's mind also seemed to have a cognitive reversal without knowing it. Although Makoto Hirako directly explained the Bankai ability, this was a reversal based on cognition. It's like when someone tells you as a matter of course that your sexual orientation should have been homosexual, and you only like the opposite sex after I hypnotized you, but, can you quickly change your sexual orientation to homosexuality? No, Mr. Number Naught, what are you still hesitating about? The threat of Aizen Sasuke is getting bigger and bigger. If you don't get rid of Aizen Sasuke first, it won't work. Makoto Hirako continued to stimulate Makoto Senju with words. At this moment, in Makoto Senju's consciousness, although Makoto Senju kept trying to remind himself that there was a problem with his cognition, he was forced to judge that Makoto Hirako and Aizen Sasuke were hostile, and Kitajushiro and Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni were companions. Chapter 683 1 minute and 38 seconds. You are really annoying, Senju Makoto said, and his eyes turned to lock on Hirako Makoto. At this moment, when Hirako Makoto maintained Bankai Nisho Hakuhozai, Senju Makoto's cognition had already judged Kitajushiro as a friendly army. This also made Senju Makoto unable to attack Kitajushiro even if he was vaguely aware of something wrong. This is also an inevitable result based on cognition. For example, Senju Makoto's cognition judged the other party as his son, but he couldn't just kill his son as an enemy just because he vaguely sensed something wrong. But as long as I kill you, it will be fine, Senju Makoto said calmly. Hirako Makoto's Bankai ability, forced reversal of cognition, is undoubtedly quite disgusting, but it does not include Hirako Makoto himself. Therefore, this is undoubtedly the biggest flaw. It doesn't matter, you can try it, Hirako Makoto responded calmly. In this situation where the perception of everything in the world has reversed, how much combat power can you maintain? Moreover, as time goes by, your perception of the reversal will become more certain, so your time is quite limited. After a while, even if you understand that the perception of the enemy and us has reversed, you will still be unable to resist attacking Aizen Sasuke, who is a greater threat, right? In response to Hirako Mako, Senju Makoto drew his sword and slashed from a distance. However, under the state of reversal of perception, Senju Makoto's sword subconsciously slashed in the opposite direction of Hirako Makoto. I'm really curious, how long will it take Mr. Number Naught to find my position? Hirako Makoto said playfully. For Hirako Makoto, it would be better to be able to turn Senju Makoto into a friendly force against Aizen Sasuke through the reversal of perception, but the first purpose is undoubtedly to protect Kitajushiro and delay enough time. With Aizen Sasuke's zanpakutō's ability stilled, Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni's advantage has become more and more obvious with the terrifying Zankodachi. And as long as Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni finds a chance, with the extremely high temperature of the Zankodachi, he can completely turn Aizen Sasuke into ash. However, just when Hirako Makoto is about to tease Senju Makoto slowly like teasing a monkey, Senju Makoto slashed accurately in the direction of Hirako Makoto with the next sword. Bang! Hirako Makoto's pupils shrank, and he instinctively retreated quickly. The Najiko flower stand where he was standing was directly chopped off a corner. He barely dodged the blow in an extremely embarrassed manner, and said in disbelief, "How is it possible? Is it a coincidence?" However, in response to Hirako Makoto, Senju Makoto continued to accurately slash his zanpakutō towards his position. Although Senju Makoto's movements seemed to be quite unsuitable and abnormally sluggish, as if he was forcing his left hand to do the work of his right hand, he still posed a great threat to Hirako Makoto with his spiritual pressure that far surpassed that of Hirako Makoto. However, at this moment, Hirako Makoto could not help but feel a surge of fear in his heart. You know, when Hirako Makoto deliberately reversed a lot of Senju Makoto's cognition, it was not as simple as thinking that his position was on the left and then swinging the knife to the right. In fact, in addition to the reversal of the cognition of the outside world, even Senju Makoto's self-control was reversed. It was obviously the left hand that moved, but it was actually the right hand. Or it was trying to move the right foot forward, but it was actually the left foot that was moving backward, and so on. Therefore, even among Hirako Makoto's zanpakutō abilities, being able to ensure that he did not fall to the ground in the first place was already a very powerful body control ability, not to mention that it seemed that Senju Makoto had recovered considerable combat power in less than a moment. What's even more terrifying is that Senju Makoto's movements are becoming smoother at a speed visible to the naked eye. This also made Hirako Makoto, who didn't dare to take Senju Makoto's attack head-on, could only dodge in a panic, and was almost cut by Senju Makoto several times. Hirako Makoto's face became more and more ugly, and he spoke in an increasingly embarrassing situation. This is not in line with common sense. How did you do it? In response, Senju Makoto did not answer Hirako Makoto, but continued to attack Hirako Makoto while secretly adjusting his own nerves. Perhaps Hirako Makoto could forcefully affect Senju Makoto's mental cognition, but Senju Makoto, relying on his extreme understanding of the spirit body, manually controlled and adjusted the various nerve signals of his own spirit body. This kind of thing may be an impossible operation for other beings, but Senju Makoto only needs a little time to adjust his spirit body to a state of perfect adaptation to cognitive reversal. Not only the manipulation of the body, but also the reversal and inverted cognition of vision, hearing, touch, smell, etc. of the outside world can also be restored to normal through adjustment. The principle is that the signal reflected in the retina and then transmitted to the brain for imaging is reversed in the transmission process. Finally, puff. Senju Makoto suddenly accelerated and passed by him at a speed far exceeding that of Hirako Makoto. The next moment, a large amount of blood spurted out of Hirako Makoto's chest and he fell straight down. It took 1 minute and 38 seconds. Senju Makoto slowly summed up himself. This is not only the time it took to defeat Hirako Makoto, but also that time it took Senju Makoto to secretly adjust various nerve signals. It's been too long since I was on the front line of the 4th Division, and I'm a little rusty after all. Senju Makoto sighed secretly. If it were me decades ago, the time it took to adjust these nerve signals through Udeo and spirit control should have been compressed to 1 minute and 20 seconds. However, Hirako Makoto could not hear Senju Makoto's inner voice. The words 1 minute and 38 seconds were transmitted to Hirako Makoto's ears, which undoubtedly caused a great mental attack on him. I couldn't even hold on for 2 minutes. The sight in front of him was blurring rapidly, and Hirako Makoto's uncontrollable body slowly fell to the ground, causing Hirako Makoto to quickly lose consciousness. The extreme understanding of the spirit also allowed Senju Makoto to have a full grasp of how to make Hirako Makoto completely lose the ability to resist without killing him. Then, the Bankai ni Shohakubaza was released. This made Senju Makoto's control of external information and body reverse again. Then, Senju Makoto closed his eyes and slowed down for a few seconds. When he opened his eyes again, everything returned to normal with the callback of various nerve signals. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 684. The floating bamboo pierced through. As for the battle situation on Senju Makoto's side, Aiden Sasuke was undoubtedly paying attention to it from the corner of his eyes while fighting with Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. When he saw that Senju Makoto only took 1 minute and 38 seconds to defeat Hirako Makoto, Aiden Sasuke couldn't help but show some surprise. Aiden Sasuke knew that his former boss, Hirako Makoto, had quite a lot of troublesome abilities, forcing the reversal of the perception of the outside world and the signals of body manipulation. There is no doubt that this was a bad zanpakutō ability that was almost the same as Hirako Makoto's personality. Even though Aiden Sasuke firmly believed that Senju Makoto would not be blocked by Hirako Makoto, he was able to defeat Hirako Makoto at such an amazing speed. So strong, it's amazing, Aiden Sasuke couldn't help but say. But Aiden Sasuke's reaction was undoubtedly an invisible contempt for Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni. You dare to split your attention to other things when you're fighting with me? Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni said angrily, and seized the opportunity that was exposed by Aiden Sasuke's momentary distraction. The Zanpachi in his hand shook, and along with the slight delay of the mirror flower and water moon to return to defense, it pierced Aiden Sasuke's chest. Swish. However, the Zanpachi swept past, Aiden Sasuke's original figure disappeared in an instant, leaving only a piece of clothing that quickly turned into ashes. 4 Maple 3. Sakadi Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni turned his eyes and made a judgment almost instantly, and slashed the zanpaku in his hand to the right. What a pity, I guessed wrong. However, the zanpaku only cut a residual image left by Aizen Sasuke, and the real Aizen Sasuke appeared behind Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni. Kagami walked a moon slashed straight at Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's neck. Dang. However, such a fatal blow was still blocked by Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni in an extremely thrilling posture. Aizen Sasuke did not show any regret in his tone, but said playfully, "Captain Yamamoto, if you are careless because of the restrictions on Kagami Walk to Moon, you'll die. It's still 1,000 years too early to take my life, Aizen." In response to Aizen Sasuke, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni's increasingly terrifying counterattack. Boom. A column of extremely hot fire shot up into the sky on the battlefield, reflecting a large area of the sky into a red color representing death. The entire Karakura town has completely turned into an endless sea of fire under the influence of the zanpakutō. The extreme temperature in the air forced most of the Aranses and Shinigami to move the battlefield to the air. Under such circumstances, the one who suffered the most was Hitsugaya. Although he was also a Bankai, and also the strongest zanpakutō of a certain system, Hitsugaya, who maintained the Great Red Lotus Horinmara, not only doubled his spiritual pressure consumption under the invisible suppression of the zanpakutō, but also his ice production was constantly decreasing. In the most central area of Karakura town, in addition to the fierce battle between Aizen Sasuke and Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni, there was Senju Cheng who continued towards Yukitijushiro. Senju Cheng. Your guardian seems vulnerable. Yukitijushiro tried to stabilize his shaky body and said in a deep voice, "You are very strong, stronger than everyone present." Finally, Senju Cheng paused slightly 10 steps away from Yukitijushiro and said, "Who knows, but those who stand in my way will only die. I'm so sorry, I will never." However, before Yukitijushiro finished speaking, Senju Cheng disappeared instantly. At that moment, Senju Cheng had already approached Yukitijushiro, with his zanpakutō pointed directly at Yukitijushiro's chest. Bang! Just as the wooden shield that was inserted into the void with the extended chain was raised, Senju Cheng suddenly felt that this fake zanpakutō, which was condensed by spirit particles, instantly fell into a strange static state. It did not collapse, but Senju Cheng slightly exerted force, and the zanpakutō instantly broke into 2 pieces. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Yukitijushiro's other hand held a wooden spear and suddenly thrust it towards Senju Cheng. "You can't block it." Senju Cheng's eyes became more solemn when he really felt this power called static up close. This is just like intercepting a part of the power of name and using it. However, Yukitijushiro's spirit body could not withstand this power at all, and even needed the help of the wooden shield and wooden spear that seemed to have an extraordinary origin to exert it. Facing Yukitijushiro's counter-attack, Senju Cheng dodged it easily with a flash. Then, Senju Cheng raised his open palm. Suddenly, countless quartz-like deadwood emerged from the place where Yukitijushiro was standing, directly forking up the inconvenient Yukitijushiro and imprisoning Yukitijushiro's joints. Yukitijushiro frowned, not expecting this kind of attack at all. He subconsciously stacked the deadwood behind him with the spear in his hand, thus destroying the internal stability of the deadwood with the power of stillness and then breaking free. However, after Senju Cheng understood the power characteristics of stillness, when he used the spiritual particle structure to form these quartz-like deadwood, he carried out specific transformations in a targeted manner. After being affected by the power of stillness, instead of becoming fragile, it was like concrete solidification, further completely restricting Yukitijushiro's movements. In an instant, from a distance, Yukitijushiro looked like a god fixed on the deadwood, unable to move or resist. Then, a quartz-like deadwood emerged from the feet of Senju Cheng, and while it was spinning and condensing, it turned into a spear covered with spiral patterns and fell into Senju Cheng's hand. "If you really mastered the Spirit King's right arm, you might be able to cause me some trouble. Unfortunately, in this state, you are like a child wielding a sledgehammer. It only takes a slight impact on your balance, and the sledgehammer is enough to crush you." Senju Cheng said this lightly, and at the same time, he threw the spear in his hand at the tightly bound Yukitijushiro. Yukituk. After realizing that something was wrong, Kakushansui, who desperately rushed towards Yukitijushiro, shouted in disbelief, and the spear went straight through Yukitijushiro's chest. The wooden shield and wooden spear that were originally tightly held by Yukitijushiro slid down from the air powerlessly. The chain that had always connected Jinwushuyu and Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni also slowly dissipated into the void. Chapter 685 The throne is waiting for me. Stillness completely disappeared on the battlefield of Karakura town. The situation was reversed briefly by stillness, and as Yamamoto Shichikuni's originally pierced chest spurted out a lot of blood, the power of Mirror Flower Water Moon also returned to normal, and the situation once again fell into an absolutely unfavorable situation for the Gotti 13. And Kakushansui was still staring blankly at Yukita Jushiro, who was pierced in the distance, his face still showing disbelief, muttering, How is it possible? Yukita, but the Spirit King's right arm, how could he lose so easily? The next moment, Senju Cheng appeared in front of Kakushansui, speaking in a cold and calm tone. Stillness. It's just a boring power. Not to mention Yukita Jushiro, even the Soul King himself can't stop the world from moving forward. The defeat of the Gotti 13 will be a foregone conclusion that no one can change or stop. Upon hearing this, Kakushansui's eyes, which were originally filled with shock and confusion, slowly became firm, and he stared at Senju Cheng and spoke. A foregone conclusion? That's not necessarily true. If you want to destroy the Gotti 13, you have to win my game first. Senju Cheng tapped his mask lightly as if he was bored, and then asked back. So, you want to play a game with two people at the same time? Two people? After saying this, Kakushansui was stunned, and then subconsciously looked in the direction of Yamamoto Shichikuni. Yamamoto Shichikuni had already fallen in a pool of blood, and his life or death was uncertain. His spiritual pressure was also weak to a level that Kakushansui had never felt before. Instead, there was Aizen Sasuke, who was wearing a strange white adori condensed by the materialized spiritual pressure. Facing the eyes of Kakushansui, whose pupils shrank into adult, Aizen Sasuke's arrogant face showed a gentle smile and said, Since Yan Qingjun wants to play a game, then I will also accompany you for a while. Let's see who will knock down Captain Kaku in the game first. These words full of contempt entered Kakushansui's ears, but did not make Kakushansui feel the slightest anger. The only feeling was fear. No matter how confident Kakushansui was, he knew that he could never beat Aizen Sasuke in this mysterious no. Naught. He would definitely be beaten in an instant, right? However, Kakushansui's seemingly stunned behavior undoubtedly made Aizen Sasuke a little dissatisfied, and he urged. Captain Kaku, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and release your zanpakutō to start the game, don't spoil Yan Qingjun's fun. Senju Cheng shook his head and said. Don't make it difficult for Captain Kaku, he doesn't seem to be interested in playing games. After a pause, Senju Cheng estimated the time and said. Instead, let's go to Soul Society and create the King Key first. Hearing this, Kakushansui suddenly shuddered, remembering his mission as a member of the 13th Gotti squad, and subconsciously opened his mouth to stop Senju Cheng. Wait, puff. Suddenly, Kakushansui clearly heard the sound of flesh and blood being pierced, and the strength in his body quickly faded like a tide. Kakushansui slowly turned his head with some difficulty, and what came into his sight was Aizen Sasuke, who was standing behind him at some point. Hush. Since you don't want to play games, then lie down obediently as an ant and don't disturb others rashly. This is the most basic etiquette, Captain Kaku. You, Kakushansui tried hard to squeeze out a word from his throat, and his eyes unconsciously dropped behind him, only to find that his lock knot and soul sleep were pierced at the same time. It's over. Kakushansui only had time to flash this thought in his mind, and his consciousness was completely immersed in darkness. And with the defeat of Yamamoto Shichikuni, Yukita Jushiro, Kakushansui and Hirako Mako, the captain-level combat power left in the entire Karakura town of the 13th Gotti squad is already very few. Since Yan Qingjun is here in person, the remaining people will be left to Yan Qingjun to deal with personally. Aizen Sasuke said. Okay. Senju Cheng said, raised his hand and stepped on the ground casually. The next moment, the ground of the entire fate Karakura town suddenly burst into countless quartz-like dead trees heading towards the death gods. Be careful. Shocked voices rang out. However, except for the captain-level Shinigami who could resist a little, the vice-captains and below were almost instantly destroyed. Either unconscious, or imprisoned, or dead. In less than a few breaths, the Shinigami's spiritual pressure that was still active in Karakura town was almost gone. However, this exaggerated scene that almost instantly changed the terrain of the entire Karakura town, in the eyes of Aizen Sasuke, not only did not have the slightest cruelty, but he sighed and said, You are so gentle, Cheng-ge. Senju Cheng glanced at Aizen Sasuke and understood that Aizen Sasuke meant that he had already shown mercy to most of the Shinigami. Those Shinigami who were directly thrashed into blood foam by the Deadwood were almost all diehards of Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni or diehards of the aristocratic class. However, what surprised Senju Cheng was that Rogue Guru Meikensei sacrificed himself to save Kunichiro and was knocked unconscious by 2 dead trees. This also made Rogue Guru Meikensei the only captain-level Shinigami who lost his combat power in this wave of attacks, except for the bulky Komamura Sajin. The only captain-level combat power left now is Hitsuge Ayashiro, Kurosaki Mayuri, Zaraki Kenpachi, Arashoda Bokichin, and Hokaujira. However, except for Kurosaki Mayuri, all these captains are injured. Not to mention taking the initiative to attack, I'm afraid that even self-protection is quite weak. On the side of the Yaransei, Stark, Byakugan, Ulkira, and Yami still retain considerable combat power. In addition, there is Ichimura Jin, who played a supporting role throughout the whole process, and Tosunkane, who had a love-hate relationship with Komamura Sajin for a long time without a clear winner. Let's go, Cheng-ge. Aizen Sasuke glanced at them, his eyes seemed to ignore the 5 captains, and said, "The throne is waiting for us." This sentence, in the ears of the Shinigami and the Yaransei, may directly point to the Soul King Palace. Only Senju Cheng knew what Aizen Sasuke meant. Throne. However, among the various looks cast by the Yaransei, Senju Cheng did not refute that it was far from being a throne. And with Senju Cheng's slight nod, Ulkira tapped his fingers lightly, opening the black cavity passage leading to Soul Society for Senju Cheng and Aizen Sasuke. Chapter 686. The Secret of Squad Zero. As the black chamber that Senju Cheng and Aizen Sasuke and his party stepped into slowly closed, the fate Karakura town that had been completely reduced to ruins suddenly became quiet. Only the flames ignited by the aftermath of the Zanpakutō were still burning. However, the flames that spread across every corner of Karakura town failed to bring a trace of warmth to the remaining Shinigami, and almost all of them were cold. Defeated. They gathered the combat power of the entire 13th Division and the Masked Corps, and were completely defeated. The war seemed to have been completely declared over at this moment. And the reason why they were able to survive was not so much because of their strength, but rather because of luck and being despised, damn it. Kaujira, who always attached great importance to gentlemanly style, couldn't help but lose his composure and punched the ruined wall beside him, venting the frustration and anger of being ignored by Aizen Sasuke like an ant. However, in addition to frustration and anger, despair also enveloped everyone's heart. Is there no way out at all? Hitsuge Ayashiro, whose spiritual pressure was almost exhausted and even his Bankai could no longer be maintained, tried to keep a straight face, maintain the dignity and demeanor of a captain, and spoke. However, this question was met with silence. Facing Aizen Sasuke, who defeated Yamamoto Shinraisai Shichikuni head-on, and the nor Yaransei who defeated Suzuki Chojiro, Hirako Mako, Yukita Jashiro, Kakushansui, and instantly killed a large number of Shinigami. Who else can be their opponent in the current GOTY 13? The atmosphere became more and more solemn and depressing, and the atmosphere of despair without a backbone was constantly spreading. At this moment, a voice that seemed a little out of tune reached everyone's ears. Sorry, I'm a little late. Hitsuge Ayashiro and the others looked up, and it was Urahara Kisuke, dressed in white and green, who appeared in front of everyone. Suddenly, Kaujira shouted with full anger on his face. Urahara Kisuke, why did you show up now? The war is over. As a member of the Masked Corps, Kaujira was familiar with Urahara Kisuke, and subconsciously regarded Urahara Kisuke as a partner who shared the same position as him. However, Urahara Kisuke's appearance now undoubtedly made Kaujira subconsciously regard Urahara Kisuke as a cowardly deserter, and he went straight forward and wanted to grab Urahara Kisuke's collar. However, Urahara Kisuke raised his hand to block Kaujira's action, and said with a smile on his face. The war is not over yet. What? Kaujira was stunned. The next moment, several figures emitting captain-level spiritual pressure appeared beside Urahara Kisuke. Yorishi Shoin, Isshin Kurosaki, Masaki Kurosaki, and Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida who were just dug out from the ruins. However, Mayuri Kurosaki, who had always been at odds with Kisuke Urahara, glanced at them, and lingered on Isshin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki before sneering. Do you think that having one more Kisuke Urahara or Yorishi Shoin will be helpful? Or do you think that relying on a former captain of the 10th Division or a queen who has been missing for decades can defeat Seireitei? There should be a limit to joking. Indeed, Hitsuge Yatsuru tried to stay calm, frowned, and said, Seireitei is so powerful that even Captain General Yamamoto is no match for him, not to mention the existence of those troublesome Aranseis. With just our strength, I'm afraid it's a bit insufficient. I didn't say that we can defeat Seireitei with just our combat power. Our mission is just to contain him. Kisuke Uehara said. What do you mean? Kurosaki Mairi asked. When the situation in the Seireitei becomes so serious that the GOTY 13 is completely unable to handle it, the Zero Squad will arrive. Uehara Kisuke said, and the eyes of the Shinigami present once again glowed with hope. So, what we have to do is to delay that time for Aizen Sosaf to create the Cheng-ge as much as possible, giving the adults of the Zero Squad time to arrive at the Seireitei. However, what Uehara Kisuke didn't realize was, when he said this, Shibuya Yorishi's mouth was vaguely ironic and disdainful. Although the Shibuya family has not had direct contact with the Zero Squad for many years, if Shibuya Yorishi's guess is correct, Uehara Kisuke is definitely not delaying time for the Zero Squad to arrive. The real strength of the Zero Squad is that the bones of each member are reconstructed with the help of the power of the Soul King, and they are also the keys to enter and exit the Soul King Palace, the Cheng-ge. More importantly, as long as the members of the Zero Squad are in the Soul King Palace, their real heart and soul are all lodged in the palaces where they live in the Soul King Palace, thus possessing another sense of immortality. Once the Zero Squad goes down to the world and leaves the Soul King Palace, the heart and soul will be transferred to the body, thus forming a huge flaw. For the Zero Squad, being killed after leaving the Soul King Palace is the real death. Facing opponents of the level of Aizen Sosaf and the Master, the Zero Squad will never rashly go down to the world without full confidence. Therefore, in Shibuya Yorishi's judgment, the purpose of Uehara Kisuke's doing so is likely to delay time for the Zero Squad to fight in the Soul King Palace, and also to allow the Zero Squad to personally collect information about the battle between Aizen Sosaf and the Master. Compared with Uehara Kisuke's plan, Shibuya Yorishi is now more puzzled how the Master and Aizen Sosaf joined together. If the Master had not appeared and quietly passed some information to Shibuya Yorishi would not have dared to believe such a shocking fact. However, Shibuya Yorishi, who gradually reacted, did not stop Uehara Kisuke's intention. Instead, he understood that Uehara Kisuke could not help but show up. This would undoubtedly reduce a hidden danger for Senju Cheng to control the Soul Society in the future. That is, Shibuya Yorishi's eyes fell obscurely behind Uehara Kisuke, thinking silently. I hope he can still be alive after this battle. However, Uehara Kisuke was unaware of Shibuya Yorishi's gaze. After boosting morale in a simple and effective way, Uehara Kisuke used the props prepared in advance to open a gate to the Soul Society, and then stepped into it first. The rest of the Shinigami also gritted their teeth and followed in, heading towards the final battle. Chapter 687. The curtain opens for the new king. Aizen Sosaf and Senju Cheng, who entered the Dangai first, were still unaware of the actions of Uehara Kisuke and the other remaining captain-level Shinigami. However, even if they knew about their actions, they would not care. The final battle site needs the audience, and they can also take the opportunity to continue to eliminate some of the hidden pieces left by the Zero Division in the Seireitei. The Zero Division will not go to the lower world. Unless Senju Cheng takes the initiative to expose his identity as the controller of the name, the Zero Division will never go to the lower world. This is the conclusion drawn by Senju Cheng and Aizen Sosaf in secret deduction. It is true that the Cheng-ge that enters the Soul King Palace can be created by destroying Karakura Town. But once the members of the Zero Division go to the lower world, they are also lively Cheng-ges, and there is a possibility that the members of the Zero Division will be completely killed after leaving the Soul King Palace. More importantly, just as Senju Cheng is afraid of the existence of Hyoshuga Ichibara is also afraid of Senju Cheng. Before the identity of the controller of Cheng Senju's name is confirmed, Hyoshuga Ichibara will never leave the Soul King Palace, otherwise it will give Cheng Senju a chance to steal the house. Hyoshuga Ichibara will never choose this, and he dare not easily weaken the defense of the Soul King Palace. They will only choose to wait for Aizen Sosaf, who intends to challenge, to climb up in the Soul King Palace. Aizen Sosaf and Cheng Senju are very clear about this, and if all members of the Zero Division really go to the lower world, then Cheng Senju and Zaraki Xuan don't mind pretending to steal the house. First, study the Soul King and see why Hyoshogu Ichibei is willing to guard the Soul King for thousands of years. If possible, Makoto Senju doesn't even mind stealing the Soul King and even the entire Soul King Palace, so that he and Hyoshogu Ichibei can switch between offensive and defensive. As long as the Soul King Palace guarded by the rest of the Zero Division members is destroyed, then Hyoshogu Ichibei will be left alone and beaten. However, just as Senju Makoto and Aizen Sosok led the crowd to continue walking towards Soul Society without haste, a bright yellow light appeared at the end of their sight. Kutsu. Immediately, Ichimura Jin and Tosunkane, who were following Aizen Sosok, changed their faces. Even if they were captain-level Shinigami, once they were swallowed by Kutsu, they might be exiled to the Dangai forever and unable to return to normal time and space. Lord Aizen, hurry up. Tosunkane hurriedly reminded. However, Aizen Sosok's expression was still so arrogant and calm, and he said, "Leave? There's no need for that." Indeed. Senju Makoto's voice also said with a little more teasing. If we are blocked by Jutsu on the way to Soul Society, it would be a joke. But Jutsu was not something that the Shinigami or Hollows can deal with, Lord Aizen. However, before Tosun could finish, Senju Makoto and Aizen Sosok tacitly burst out with a terrifying spiritual pressure that materialized and rushed forward. Boom. In an instant, in this narrow and dim and lightless broken world, a terrifying storm swept up in an instant. Ichimura Jin's face also changed suddenly. At that moment, in addition to the spiritual pressure of Aizen Sosok being unable to be sensed again, the spiritual pressure of the Nord that mysteriously disappeared for decades, was also unable to be sensed. This made Ichimura Jin's heart almost uncontrollably sink completely. After realizing that Aizen Sosok attacked the Soul King Palace to recapture the soul of Senju Makoto, and that Zanpakutō, who seemed to have some connection with Senju Makoto, was also sealed by Aizen Sosok, Jin Ichimura realized that something was wrong, and he also knew that he might have been teased by Aizen Sosok. However, Jin Ichimura has not found the right time to attack yet, and he suddenly realized that Number Nord is also a terrifying existence at the same level as Aizen Sosok. This made Jin Ichimura, who has an extremely tough mind, feel a little bit despair. When the spiritual pressure storm dissipated, what shocked Jin Ichimura was that Jutsu was actually destroyed, torn apart and destroyed by the spiritual pressure. Please, Cheng-ge. Aizen Sosok stretched out his hand slightly to Senju Makoto in a slightly elegant manner, as if he and Senju Makoto were polite to each other to see who would step on the red carpet first. Aizen-kun, you are welcome, please. Senju Makoto also said in a slightly polite manner. However, this scene of brotherly friendship and respect made young I, who was standing at the end of the team, feel a sour taste in his teeth, and couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. TSK, what Number Nord is so arrogant? After I return to my sword, my anger has accumulated to the extreme. You may not be my opponent. However, when Yamai finished speaking, he looked up and looked in the direction of Aizen Sosok. What he saw was Aizen Sosok's cold and ruthless eyes that faintly revealed a hint of anger. Crack. The next moment, the terrifying spiritual pressure crashed towards Yamai. Yamai's muscle-spirit body, which seemed to be composed of muscles, instantly made a dense and tooth-grinding sound. Crack. Finally, accompanied by the crisp breaking sound of Yamai's knee joints, this Seireitei who had fought with Kinpachi Zaraki for a long time after returning to his sword completely fell to the ground powerlessly. This scene also made the expressions of the other Seireitei present all shudder, and they deeply felt an indescribable gap. In the past, in order to ennoble the Espada, Aizen Sosok had said that he considered the Espada as companions or family. However, at this moment, the other Seireitei suddenly understood one thing: perhaps, the only one regarded as companion or family by Aizen Sosok was Number Nord. As for the status of all the other Seireitei combined, it is probably not as high as Number Nord. Aizen Sosok did not say another word, and did not even look at Yamai for a moment. Yamai? Just an experimental subject with some value. While thoroughly establishing Senju Makoto's authority among the Espada in this way, he continued to go to Soul Society with Senju Makoto. Soon, with the exit of the Black Cavity opened in Soul Society, Aizen Sosok and Senju Makoto took the first step into Soul Society. The deliberately reduced and undisguised terrifying spiritual pressure swept across the entire Seireitei and the nearby Rukonge area. King, there is no need to be low-key, just announce your arrival. Even though Aizen Sosok knew very well that he would not be the future king of Soul Society, he did not mind opening the curtain for his best friend to become the new king in such a high-profile way. Chapter 688 Target. Senju Makoto. When Aizen Sasuke's spiritual pressure swept through the Seireitei with great force, the entire Seireitei was almost completely silent. Those ordinary soldiers could hardly stand up under such a terrifying spiritual pressure. In addition, the faces of the Shinigami such as Kachika Byakuya who had just returned to the Seireitei and were receiving treatment were particularly ugly. Aizen Sasuke's high-profile entry into Soul Society undoubtedly announced the result of the war in the real world. The God 13 and the masked corps led by Minamoto Jinrai Shichikuni were defeated. Aizen, they are here. Kachika Byakuya said with an extremely ugly face, and subconsciously clenched the Senbon Bancho in his hand. That's right. Zaraki Fugai appeared in front of Kachika Byakuya and Hisajishi and confirmed. It's not just Aizen Sasuke, there are also that forest barders headed by Number Naught, as well as Tosen Kaname and Ichimura Jin. Once these words came out, the atmosphere was undoubtedly plunged into an incomparable solemnity. Hisajishi narrowed his eyes and subconsciously looked at the closed operating room behind him. Senju Makoto's body was in it, and Unohana Retsu had already entered with Nell. Captain Unohana's operation, how long would it take to complete? Hisajishi asked with a little more urgency. I don't know. Zaraki Fugai's answer was quite brief, and then he added. But it's unrealistic to expect Vice Captain Senju to assist Aizen Sasuke. The damage to the soul will cause all kinds of problems. However, what Hisajishi cared about was not whether he could use Senju Makoto's power to protect Soul Society, but whether he could protect Senju Makoto from leaving here before Aizen Sasuke broke through the Seireitei. In Hisajishi's heart, the only person he is truly loyal to and who gives meaning to his life is Senju Makoto. At present, it seems that Aizen Sasuke's first goal is not to break through the Seireitei, but to teleport to the outskirts of Rukongai, Karakura town. Zaraki Futaba said. Upon hearing this, Kachika Byakuya hesitated for a moment. Carrying the honor of a noble, Kachika Byakuya must not retreat, even when facing an enemy that he cannot defeat at all. Letting Kachika Byakuya watch Aizen Sasuke destroy Karakura town and create the Cheng-ge is undoubtedly contrary to the belief that Kachika Byakuya has adhered to for thousands of years. You stay here to ensure the operation, I'll go and see the situation. Kachika Byakuya said, and his staggering figure quickly stabilized, and then quickly rushed towards Karakura town. At this moment, Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke and his party arrived at the edge of the real Karakura town without haste. The whole city was almost dead silent. Except for a very small number of humans with high spiritual power who have begun to slowly wake up, all humans are still in a coma and have no idea of their situation. Standing on the edge of Karakura town, Aizen Sasuke slowly raised his hand and pointed directly at Karakura town in front of him. The pure spiritual pressure continued to compress in his palm, as if he wanted to destroy the entire Karakura town with one blow and create the Cheng-ge. Seeing this scene, Ichimura Jin's heart undoubtedly made Ichimura Jin's heart fall into extreme struggle and hesitation. Hundreds of thousands of lives in Karakura town are about to die, and once Aizen Sasuke successfully creates the Cheng-ge, he will have the power to enter the Soul King Palace at any time. Then, whether it is revenge for Master Senju or taking back the part of Matsumoto Ranjaiku's soul in Aizen Sasuke's hands, it will be even more out of reach. However, the success rate of the shot at this moment is slim. Even though, in order to ensure the possibility of killing Aizen Sasuke, Ichimura Jin has never really exposed his true zanpakutō ability in the past 100 years. That, like a poisonous snake, the ability of the zanpakutō, the god-killing spear, which is sure to kill a lieutenant once beaten. Aizen Sasuke has never let down his guard against him. Could this be an illusion? Unknowingly, a large area of Ichimura Jin's back was wet. While holding his zanpakutō tightly in his white sleeves, he subconsciously kept turning the bracelet with special meaning. In response, Senju Makoto glanced in Ichimura Jin's direction, and through his expression that did not change at all, he clearly judged the urgency and anxiety in his heart at the moment. However, with the sudden change in the plan, the fangs of Ichimura Jin that Senju Makoto had originally buried next to Aizen Sasuke now had another important function in Senju Makoto's eyes. Therefore, Makoto Senju did not tell Jin Ichimura his true identity, nor was there any need to do so. With Jin Ichimura's deep and cautious character, Makoto Senju was also sure that Jin Ichimura would not choose to rashly assassinate Aizen Sasuke at this moment, thus destroying the script that Makoto Senju prepared for Jin Ichimura. And just as Aizen Sasuke was slowly accumulating strength, stop. Aizen. Kachika Byakuya finally arrived and stood in front of Aizen Sasuke without hesitation. Aizen Sasuke, who knew the whereabouts of Unohana Retsu and his group very well, pretended to be a little confused and spoke. Oh, Kachika Byakuya? You didn't die in the Palace of the Night. That really disappoints you, Aizen. Kachika Byakuya replied. Aizen Sasuke thought of something and spoke. It seems that Zarakisu has also escaped. Otherwise, you would not have had a chance to return to Soul Society in such a deadly situation. After a pause, Aizen Sasuke suddenly thought of something and spoke logically. Wait, you returned to Soul Society, which means that Unohana and Nell also returned to Soul Society, Senju Cheng. Damn it. At this moment, in the eyes of Ichimura Jin and many of the Espada, Aizen Sasuke's face actually showed a trace of obvious fear, and then his voice became more urgent. Immediately attack the Seireitei, target the 4th Division and Unohana, and do not let Senju Cheng, the troublesome guy, revive at all costs. In an instant, not only the Aranses were stunned by this order, but Byakuya Kachika's face was obviously pale. Byakuya Kachika never thought that he just wanted to fulfill his last duty as a Shinigami and a noble with his life, but Aizen Sasuke instantly shifted his target to Senju Cheng. Ichimura Jin listened to what Aizen Sasuke said. He was overjoyed at the news about Senju Cheng, but he tried to show a hint of doubt on his face and asked, Lord Aizen, Senju Cheng is just a vice captain. Why do you take him so seriously? This question was also that question in the minds of the other Aranses present. Chapter 689 The Last Hope. When Aizen Sasuke defeated Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni with an absolute attitude, Aizen Sasuke's prestige among the 10 Espadas had already reached its peak. After that, it was only Yukita Jushiro's special ability that slightly hindered the battle. However, Aizen Sasuke, who has now defeated Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni, who is known as the strongest god of death in 1,000 years, is actually afraid of a mere vice-captain. Aizen Sasuke, who is good at acting in people's hearts, will naturally not explain it deliberately, otherwise it will only be too much. Jin, now is not the time to delve into this issue. When Aizen Sasuke said this, he looked at Ichimura Jin with a hint of dissatisfaction, which made the other Aranse tremble in their hearts. After all, Yamaizen is still before their eyes. And Senju Cheng, who has always been silent and pretending to be cold, spoke as the number 0. Aizen-kun, the threat from that man to you cannot be ignored, but the creation of the King Key is also imminent, otherwise it will be troublesome if the Zero Squad in the Soul King Palace arrives first. After a pause, Senju Cheng seemed to think for a while and said, How about this, I will lead the crowd to attack the Seireitei. The only one who has a glimmer of hope to revive that man is Unohana, right? We just need to find a way to delay or kill Unohana. Aizen Sasuke heard this and said with a slightly relaxed expression. In this case, then I will trouble Yanshin-kun. Senju Cheng did not answer, but glanced at the others, then turned and headed straight towards the Seireitei. In addition to Ichimura Jin and Tozunkaname, the remaining 3 Espada Stark, Byakuya, and Ulquiorra saw this and followed after a slight hesitation. In addition to Aizen Sasuke's orders, Senju Cheng's power displayed as the North in Karakura town before also far exceeded them. This forced the Aranses who believed in the rule of the strong in Hutomundo to obey. However, seeing this scene, Byakuya Kachika's blood pressure soared, and he was completely panicked and regretful. Although Hisajishi and Zarakifuwa were still protecting the Seireitei, it was obviously impossible to stop so many enemies. If the operation performed by Unohana was destroyed, then I became a traitor. Stop. At this moment, Byakuya Kachika's eyes turned red and he shouted like a roar. Bankai! Sunbone Sakura Kijiki countless cherry blossoms flew towards the direction where Senju Cheng and others left, trying to stop them. However, the moment the sea of cherry blossoms appeared, as the terrifying spiritual pressure of Aizen Sasuke swept across, countless cherry blossoms instantly fell. Powerlessness, despair, regret. At this moment, Byakuya Kachika deeply realized his naivety, the stupidity of acting in accordance with the honor of the nobility. No. Byakuya Kachika shouted with his faith on the verge of collapse, but he could only watch the figures of Senju Cheng and others disappear from his sight in a flash. Instead, what appeared in Byakuya Kachika's sight was Aizen Sasuke's palm that was constantly expanding. Thank you for the information you provided, Captain Kachika. Aizen Sasuke's indifferent voice reached Byakuya Kachika's ears, and his palm was pinching Byakuya Kachika's neck. With the gap between the two sides, it only takes a moment, that is Byakuya Kachika's death. At this moment, a cross-world gate suddenly opened on the side. Crescent moon, sky rush. 2 crescent moons of completely different colors rushed out of the cross-world gate at the same time, crashing into Aizen Sasuke's body, causing smoke to rise into the sky. At this moment, Byakuya Kuchika felt something lifting the collar on the back of his neck, and his whole body suddenly became lighter, and he quickly distanced himself from Aizen Sasuke. When Byakuya Kuchika came to his senses, he found that the one who saved him was the demon cat he hated the most, Shibuya Yorishi. After Shibuya Yorishi put Byakuya Kuchika down, she grinned and teased. "Hey, Byakuya kid, it seems that after nearly 100 years, your progress is still limited." When Byakuya Kuchika heard this, several blue veins on his forehead popped out unconsciously and throbbed. However, Byakuya Kuchika did not clarify and defend his honor as a noble, but spoke urgently. "Captain Unohana has brought back Makoto-kun's soul, and Aizen Sasuke seems to be deeply afraid of Makoto-kun's existence for unknown reasons, and has sent all his subordinates to attack the Seireitei to prevent Makoto-kun from reviving." This news made the expressions of the queensies and Shinigami who had just stepped out of the gate of the world stunned. Then, everyone suddenly realized that Aizen Sasuke was alone at this moment, and the spiritual pressure of many Aranses including Ichimura Jin, Tosun Kaname and Number Naught appeared in the direction of the Seireitei. Only Shifuya Yorishi's expression was slightly strange. However, in such a critical and urgent situation, no one had time to interpret the strangeness in Shifuya Yorishi's expression. Instead, Urahara Kisuke's eyes lit up slightly. Although Urahara Kisuke had no idea why Aizen Sasuke was afraid of Senju Makoto, as long as he stopped Aizen Sasuke from achieving what he wanted, it would definitely not be wrong. Except Captain Zaraki who stayed to help me hold back Aizen Sasuke, the rest of the people immediately support Seireitei. Urahara Kisuke said in a hurried tone. "Urahara, are you serious? Just you and Captain Zaraki, how could you be Aizen's opponent?" Kurosaki Ishin questioned after hearing this. More importantly, this decision is also completely different from the original plan that Kurosaki Ishin and Urahara Kisuke discussed to deal with Aizen Sasuke. In the original plan of Kurosaki Ishin and Urahara Kisuke, the last trump card to defeat Aizen Sasuke was Kurosaki Ichigo using the last Getsuga Sky Strike. "Listen to me, maybe this is a better solution," Urahara Kisuke said in a deep voice. More importantly, in Urahara Kisuke's judgment, when Kurosaki Ichigo is no longer immune to the Mirror Flower Water Moon illusion, even the last Getsuga Sky Strike will definitely not be able to push Aizen Sasuke to the limit. In this way, it is better to bet the hope of victory elsewhere. Being feared by Aizen Sasuke. Based on Urahara Kisuke's understanding of Aizen Sasuke, this may very well represent the power of Senju Makoto to truly crack Mirror Flower and Water Moon, otherwise Aizen Sasuke would never pay so much attention to it. However, before the others made up their minds to take action, No 88. Flying Dragon strikes Thief, Thunder Cannon. A lightning beam that is several times thicker than a normal kitten burst out from the smoke, as if it was going to hit Urahara Kisuke and the others in one fell swoop. Chapter 690. Cajun Beast, Scream, Ben-Im. Urahara Kisuke's zanpakutō was instantly released, releasing a huge blood shield to block everyone, and shouted, "Action now!" Immediately, the other Shinigami and Quincy no longer hesitated and quickly rushed towards the direction of the Seireitei. "Don't even think about it, all of you stay here." Aizen Sasuke's arrogant and indifferent voice sounded in the smoke, followed by another Flying Dragon Strike Thief Thunder Cannon colliding from the smoke, bypassing Urahara Kisuke who was barely resisting, and rushing straight towards the direction of the other Shinigami and Quincy. Urahara Kisuke's pupils condensed, feeling the spiritual pressure of the blood shield constantly being consumed under the power of the Flying Dragon Strike Thief Thunder Cannon, but a smile appeared on his face, and he said in a hurry, "This is the opportunity." "Yes." Responding to Urahara Kisuke were Akito Bokuchin and Gorites, who had been hiding in the World Crossing Gate and did not appear directly. As two of the Ghost Duo masters of the Ghost Duo clan 100 years ago, the Ghost Duo level of Arishoda Bokuchin and Murintess is undoubtedly the best in the entire Soul Society. And the Ghost Duo that Murintess and Arishoda Bokuchin prepared in advance by hiding in the Dankai, Four Beasts Gate. 8 Directions Seal. In an instant, with the location where the two Flying Dragons striking Thieves Thunder Cannons released as the center, a large area of mysterious barriers was formed instantly. First, the gates of Dragon Tail, Tiger Bite, Turtle Armor and Phoenix Wing were formed on the 4 sides. Then, there were 8 characters, namely Kyan, Kun, General, Xin, Zun, Li, Hun, and Du, which were integrated into the surroundings, just like the intersection of beams and pillars. Almost in an instant, the special barrier formed by the combination of 4 Beasts Gate and 8 Directions sealed Aizen Sasuke, Urahara Kisuke and Zaraki Kinpachi in it. The second Flying Dragon Strike Thief Thunder Cannon was directly cut off from the barrier at the moment it was formed, and with the power of the 88th Broken Path released by Aizen Sosok, it could not even produce a ripple on the barrier. This barrier, the smoke slowly dissipated, and Aizen Sosok looked at the barrier composed of the 4 beast gates and the 8 directions sealing boundary with a hint of amazement. Don't look at it, Aizen. Urahara Kisuke held Benheim's hand and hid it in his sleeves with a faint trembling, but his expression was indifferent and lazy. This is the strongest barrier that the 2 Ghost Masters, Wields and Ashoda, have spent 100 years researching. Just for this moment, you can't escape. However, Aizen Sosok was not angry at all, but commented with a hint of disappointment in his tone. It's a bit interesting, but it seems that you are not very generous. From the beginning, you didn't dare to research the strongest Hada with the idea of killing me. It seems that the Ghost Taoist is only at this level. As soon as these words came out, there was no doubt that the faces of Wields and Ashoda, who were maintaining the barrier outside, looked a little unhappy. However, Urahara Kisuke said with a smile, Aizen, what's the point of using such a provocative and low-level method at this moment? Are you anxious? Anxious. As soon as this incisive and heart-touching word came out, Aizen Sosok raised his eyebrows slightly and said, Urahara Kisuke, it seems that you haven't figured out your situation yet. It's not just me who is sealed in this barrier, but also you and Captain Zaraki. Instead, you're anxious about how to survive. Captain Aizen, don't bother to worry about this. While Urahara Kisuke said this, his figure did not hesitate to step back a few steps, highlighting Captain Zaraki forward. Zaraki Kinpachi. What are you doing? Kinpachi Zaraki asked bluntly. Go ahead, Captain Zaraki. Urahara Kisuke said hurriedly. The tone seemed like calling a dog, which made Kinpachi Zaraki's expression obviously unfriendly. He grinned, pointed the blade faintly in the direction of Urahara Kisuke, and said, Then let me chop you to death first, how about it? Perhaps. Kinpachi Zaraki often showed that his brain capacity was insufficient, but Kinpachi Zaraki was definitely not a so-called fool. Even if Kinpachi Zaraki was obsessed with fighting, he knew very well that if Aizen Sosok, who had Mirror Flower and Water Moon, wanted to, he would never be able to chop a single hair of Aizen Sosok. What's more, Aizen Sosok was so powerful that even Yamamoto Shinigami Shibukumi, who was in Bankai, was defeated by him. He was definitely not something that Kinpachi Zaraki could match. Captain Zaraki, don't joke, the enemy is in front. Urahara Kisuke said with a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. However, Kinpachi Zaraki had no intention of giving Urahara Kisuke face, and said, So your confident trick is to let me and Aizen Sosok fight to the death in this cage, and you hide behind it. Of course it won't be just that. When he said this, Urahara Kisuke's hand hidden in his sleeve suddenly slapped Zaraki Kinpachi's neck, and a shot of special medicine was quickly injected into Zaraki Kinpachi's body. Kinpachi Zaraki's eyes were confused, and he subconsciously suspected that Urahara Kisuke behind him was Aizen Sosok, and raised his hand and slashed at Urahara Kisuke with a knife. However, Urahara Kisuke quickly retreated to avoid the knife, and faced Zaraki Kinpachi's eyes that were gradually drooping uncontrollably, and spoke slowly. Only by completely liberating all restrained beasts can we bring our fighting instincts to their limit, Captain Zaraki. As Urahara Kisuke finished speaking, Zaraki Kinpachi's eyes, which had just been completely closed, suddenly opened. However, at this moment, there was no trace of clarity in Zaraki Kinpachi's eyes, but instead they were filled with the blood-red color of bloodlust and madness. Aizen Sosok, who was watching this scene from afar, did not intend to stop Urahara Kisuke. Instead, he looked at Zaraki Kinpachi's state with interest and said, Oh? Interesting, this is probably one of the results of your research on holoification, Urahara Kisuke, forcing Captain Zaraki to enter a state completely dominated by instinct. But aren't you afraid that Captain Zaraki will tear you apart first? As for this, Urahara Kisuke, who had originally seemed to be nonchalant, became serious and said, That's why we need this cage to trap a monster like you and a beast like Captain Zaraki, to prevent unnecessary external interference from affecting Captain Zaraki's instinctive judgment. And when a mad beast is placed in a cage, do you think he will prioritize those who can threaten his existence as his first target of attack? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 691. Bankai Guanin opens Red Princess Guy. Chapter 691. Bankai Guanin Hongji Kai. Almost as soon as Urahara Kisuke finished speaking, Kinpachi Zaraki, with red eyes, roared like a beast, ignoring Urahara Kisuke, who was closer to him, and suddenly rushed towards Aizen Sasuke. And in this special state, although Kinpachi Zaraki did not release his zanpakutō, his spiritual pressure was surging wildly at a speed visible to the naked eye. The next moment, Kinpachi Zaraki raised his zanpakutō high, and the golden spiritual pressure gushed out like a fountain, slashing towards Aizen Sasuke. Dang! Aizen Sasuke raised the Kikasui in his hand and slashed back with his backhand, and a sharp sound of swords colliding echoed in the barrier. What surprised Aizen Sasuke a little was that Kinpachi Zaraki actually blocked the attack. Even though Kinpachi Zaraki was blasted back a few steps, he undoubtedly blocked it. Then, Kinpachi Zaraki seemed to be even more excited and crazy, and his burly body rushed towards Aizen Sasuke again, like a beast that had found its old enemy. In response to this, Aizen Sasuke had an idea, and with the ability of Mirror Flower and Water Moon, he left an illusion of being motionless in Kinpachi Zaraki's perception, and his own position was slightly changed, ready to get rid of this beast whose spiritual pressure was still growing. However, as soon as Aizen Sasuke's position changed, Kinpachi Zaraki seemed to have sensed something, ignoring the illusion left in the original place, and swung his sword at Aizen Sasuke again. Dang! Witnessing Kinpachi Zaraki swinging his sword at the empty air, but suddenly hitting a large piece of sparks and a wave of air, Urahara Kisuke couldn't help but smile on his face and said, "It seems that my bet was right, Aizen. No matter how your Mirror Flower and Water Moon can create an impeccable illusion, it is meaningless to a beast that has completely lost its consciousness and rationality. What drives the beast to move and judge the location of its prey is instinct." The development of the facts was just as Urahara Kisuke expected. Zaraki Kinpachi continued to fight with the air in Urahara Kisuke's eyes. The bursts of air that suddenly exploded from time to time were enough to show that Zaraki Kinpachi was only slightly affected by the Mirror Flower and Water Moon in this state. However, puff! A bloodline suddenly burst out from Zaraki Kinpachi's waist, and a large amount of blood splattered out crazily. Aizen Sasuke's figure, which had not changed at all, appeared behind Zaraki Kinpachi and spoke lightly. "It's just a beast. How can someone who can't even control himself be my opponent?" As Aizen Sasuke's voice fell, Zaraki Kinpachi seemed to be cut in half by the blow. Even though his upper body was still making a gesture to swing the sword at Aizen Sasuke, his upper body slowly began to separate from his lower body from the waist. "What a pity, Aizen, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed." Bankai Kanonkai Hongji Kai. Suddenly, Hongji and Urahara Kisuke's hands directly materialized into a huge woman with long hair in a classical bun, wearing a sleeveless kimono, and puppet-like limb joints. However, the Kanonkai Hongji Kai, which seemed to be similar to Komamura Sujin's Bankai form, did not directly attack Aizen Sasuke. Or in other words, Urahara Kisuke was not sure whether Aizen Sasuke in his eyes was the real Aizen Sasuke. However, invisible wind blew up from the barrier, blowing the hat on Urahara Kisuke's head to the ground, revealing a pair of calm and oppressive eyes, and slowly spoke. "Aizen, are you aware of my ability, the Guanin Kai Hongji Kai, which no one has seen except your Rishi and Captain Yamamoto, and can reshape everything it touches? And the potion I injected into Captain Zaraki before was mixed with some fragments of Hongji, so in a sense, Captain Zaraki and Guanin Kai Hongji Kai are always in a touching state." Hearing this, Aizen Sasuke turned his head to look at Kinpachi Zaraki, only to see a circle of stitching marks like needlework on Kinpachi's broken waist. And Kinpachi Zaraki seemed to be unscathed, and once again pounced on Aizen Sasuke's real position like a terrifying beast. Dang! The sound of swords clashing, which was not covered by the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, reverberated in the barrier again. Urahara Kisuke did not witness the specific battle situation. What he saw with his eyes might be false. It was what Aizen Sasuke wanted him to see. All Urahara Kisuke did was to maintain the Bankai Kanonkai Koji Kai, and spoke. "Aizen, so you'll be facing a crazy beast that you can't really kill. Even if you knock down Captain Zaraki 10 or 100 times, I can transform Captain Zaraki back to normal." The next moment, a flash of knife light flashed across Urahara Kisuke's neck. However, the maintained Kanonkai Koji Kai did not dissipate. Instead, the bloodline on Urahara Kisuke's neck was replaced by circles of stitches as soon as it appeared. "Of course, killing me is meaningless. Aizen, just stay here and enjoy the joy of fighting with Captain Zaraki." Urahara Kisuke's calm voice seemed to have an inexplicable confidence, the confidence to achieve the final victory. However, only Reihara Kisuke knew that his original plan had been temporarily changed. According to the original plan, it was Kuroseki Ishin who took Kuroseki Ichigo to the Dangai to practice the last crescent moon sky strike. After Zaraka Kinpachi forced Aizen Sasuke to a certain extent and inadvertently revealed the flaw of Mirror Flower Water Moon, Kuroseki Ichigo, who used the last crescent moon sky strike, became the last straw that broke Aizen Sasuke's back. Now, the hope that Uehara Kisuke pinned on as the last straw has been replaced by the man who should have sacrificed for decades. Senju Makotao. The appearance of that man appeared in Uehara Kisuke's mind. I have to admit that, apart from Aizen Sasuke, that man is the only one in the entire Seireitei that Uehara Kisuke cannot see clearly. The reason that drives Uehara Kisuke to place his hopes on that man is not only that Senju Makotao and Aizen Sasuke have completely opposite positions, but more importantly, Uehara Kisuke believes in Aizen Sasuke. Aizen Sasuke may not be unaware of the last crescent moon sky strike secret technique possessed by the Shiba clan, but Aizen Sasuke truly reveals his fear of Senju Makotao's revival. Only those that Aizen Sasuke fears can truly defeat Aizen Sasuke. Uehara Kisuke's thinking is extremely clear. However, Uehara Kisuke simply cannot see that under the illusion of mirror flowers and water moons, there is Aizen Sasuke's faint smile, a mocking and contemptuous smile. The situation is in our hands, Makotao. Chapter 692 Troublesome Opponent. Infinitely reload the Void Flash. Instantly, hundreds of thousands of void flashes burst out from the muzzle of Stark's gun and bombarded the soul-blocking membrane, dyeing a large area of the sky blue. Boom. Instantly, the soul-blocking membrane that separated the inside and outside of the silent spirit court shook violently, and layers of visible ripples continued to spread. However, although this was a large number of void flashes released by Stark, the characteristics of the soul-blocking membrane itself can block spiritual pressure, spiritual power, and spirit particles. In the eyes of a large number of Shinigami in the silent spirit court with some panic, the soul-blocking membrane that was constantly rippling finally stabilized under the bombardment of the large number of void flashes. This scene made Stark's face show some surprise, and he even looked at the double guns in his hands in a daze. The next moment, the voice of another independent individual Elenev that split after Stark's face was broken, rang out from the double guns, saying, "Idiot, why are you looking at me? I'm not being lazy." Stark said helplessly, "I didn't say anything. Your eyes are already speaking, you're already doubting me, you idiot." Lilynet's voice continued to chatter. This made the lazy Stark's helpless expression even more obvious, but Bailajan took the opportunity to mock him. "You can't even break a mere barrier, is this what you call number one? The soul-blocking membrane is not comparable to a simple ghost barrier. It is a special protective shield generated by the fluctuations released by a large number of murderous stones. It has a strong blocking effect on spiritual pressure, spiritual power, and spirit particles." Tosun said. This is not a reason for a member of the Ten Blades to not even be able to enter this Seireitei. Bailajan's words were still full of disdain. However, even though Bailajan said it righteously, everyone present understood that the reason Bailajan targeted Stark was nothing more than that he was dissatisfied with Stark's ranking above him. In Bailajan's eyes, he was once the king of Hukomundo. Even if he needed to lie dormant for a while, it was no reason for a guy like Stark to ride on his head. Makotao Senju, who had been silent all this time, ordered calmly, "In that case, then please trouble Bailajan to break the soul-blocking membrane." This commanding tone made the black mist surrounding Bailajan jump slightly, and his empty eye sockets were faintly staring at Makotao Senju. After a few breaths, just when Makotao Senju thought Bailajan would attack him in anger, the black mist on Bailajan's body became thicker again and he replied, "Okay." This reaction surprised Makotao Senju a little. After all, Makotao Senju had originally planned to take the opportunity to eliminate Bailajan, a destabilizing factor that was neither completely loyal to Aizen Sasuke nor on his side, when Bailajan attacked him. He did not expect Bailajan, who had always been ambitious, to be so flexible. Then, Bailajan's figure flashed and appeared in front of the soul-blocking membrane. Death's eye alongside filled with the breath of death, the decayed breath emanating from Bailajan quickly spread to the soul-blocking membrane. The soul-blocking membrane that blocked Stark's infinite recharge void flash was immediately corroded at a speed visible to the naked eye. Then, Bailajan did not forget to look back at Stark, and his contempt and provocation were almost undisguised. "Okay, let's go in, the target is the 4th Division." Senju Cheng said in a tone, but of course he could not really let these vast old level arances who could easily destroy the Seireitei enter the Seireitei. When Senju Cheng deliberately timed himself and just took Ichimura Jin and Tosun to enter the Seireitei, the other arances were about to take action. Crescent Moon Sky Strike. Spirit Arrow. 2 crescent moon sky strikes of different colors and 2 spirit arrows with their waves were shot at Stark, Byakugan and Ulquiorra respectively. Boom. Suddenly, a series of explosions broke out on the soul-blocking membrane, and only the hole that was rotten by Byakugan leaked some of the aftermath. Ichimura Jin's narrowed eyes flashed a trace of joy, and then he suggested with a bit of disdain. Ah, those captains actually dared to chase back from the real world. Number naught, do we need to teach them a lesson first? Senju Cheng, who knew that Ichimura Jin actually wanted to delay time, shook his head and said, "There is no need for that. Aizen-kun's instructions are to attack the 4th Division first, and leave those remnants to Stark and the others to deal with." After a pause, Senju Cheng did not forget to tease. "On the contrary, Jin, if you want to join the battle, you can go to assist Stark. Of course, Lord Aizen's order is the first priority." Ichimura Jin replied with a smile. But at this moment, at the gap in the soul-blocking membrane, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, Kuroseki Ichigo and Kuroseki Ishin rushed in, aiming directly at Senju Cheng, Ichimura Jin and Tosun Kaname. In just a moment, Shifen Yuan Yorishi, Kuroseki Ichigo and Kuroseki Ishin blocked the direction to the 4th Division. "Oh my, it seems that we still need to deal with the threat of the God of Death first," Ichimura Jin said helplessly. "No problem," Senju Cheng said lightly, and his figure rushed towards Shifen Yuan Yorishi first. And Shifen Yuan Yorishi also seemed to be risking his life. He immediately burst into instant boom, and a large area of dense lightning appeared on his body. His figure turned into an after-image and rushed back to Senju Cheng, saying, "Stop one each. Don't let them get close to the 4th Division." "Yes." Kuroseki Ichigo answered seriously, holding Tensa's Ainjitsu tightly in both hands and rushing towards Ichimura Jin, revealing his determination to risk everything. The battle has developed to this point. In Kuroseki Ichigo's eyes, the world is undoubtedly destroyed in an instant, and his shoulders are also carrying the fate of influencing the direction of the world. So, no matter what, you must not lose. Holoification. Crescent Moon, Sky Strike. However, facing the aggressive Kuroseki Ichigo, Ichimura Jin still had a smiling and indifferent expression, and silently commented in his heart. There are so many flaws, for Ichimura Jin's fighting style of really attacking and almost killing with one blow. Kuroseki Ichigo may be the best choice among the captain-level Shinigami in terms of spiritual pressure and momentum. But, there are too many flaws. Killing him only takes a moment. Ichigo Kuroseki, he's such a troublesome opponent, Ichimura Jin said helplessly as if in annoyance, and his figure quickly disappeared from the spot, avoiding the aggressive Getsuga Tensho. Chapter 693. Gained between Master and Cat. Compared to Ichigo Kuroseki's passionate blood, Ishin Kuroseki seemed extremely calm, blocking the way of Tosun Kaname. This feeling of spiritual pressure, Tosun Kaname tilted his head slightly, sensing the familiar spiritual pressure, and said with a smile, "Ishin Kuroseki." "No, I should call you Captain Shiba Ishin." "Long time no see, Captain Tosun." Ishin Kuroseki replied. "No, it's not as long as Captain Shiba thought," Tosun Kaname said after a pause. "I was there the day Captain Shiba and his wife Masaki Kuroseki first met." Ishin Kuroseki's expression changed slightly when he heard this, and he understood it in an instant, and said, "So, that vast old-level Great Hollow named Hypochromat was an experiment of Aizen, and you deliberately lured me to the human world that day." "That's right," Tosun Kaname replied. "Originally, that day, Lord Aizen simply wanted to use Captain Shiba's life to verify the combat power of Hyaku. He didn't expect that Kuroseki Masaki would appear, and he didn't expect that Captain Shiba would give up all his status, power, and strength for a female queency." At the end of the story, Tosun Kaname's words had a hint of envy. However, when talking about this past event, Kuroseki Ishin did not have the slightest regret or anger, but laughed and said, "Looking deeply into this matter, I really have to thank you and Aizen, otherwise I'm afraid I would never have the chance to meet Masaki in this life. The time with her is much happier than in the Seireitei." Although Tosun Kaname was blind and could not see Kuroseki Ishin's expression of happiness at the moment, the tone full of the sour smell of love undoubtedly deeply hurt Tosun Kaname's heart. Why should my childhood sweetheart be taken away by Tsuneshiro Tokinada and then killed, and Kurosaki Ishin is not only born noble, but also can stay with the person he loves? The envy in Tosen Kaname's heart almost instantly turned into deep jealousy and resentment, and he said, "Is this the joy of being an experimental subject? Captain Shiba, it's a pity that your happiness will end here. Whether it's your wife or your son, I'm afraid they will all disappear completely in this war." Bankai. King Mi final style Yanma cricket in an instant, the spiritual pressure released with Tosen Kaname as the center formed a huge ellipsoidal black barrier, which included Kurosaki Ishin, who didn't have time to distance himself. At the same time, the battle between Senju Cheng and Shibuya Yorishi entered a white-hot stage from the beginning. Under the gaze of countless death gods below the Seireitei, Shibuya Yorishi completely demonstrated the grace of being a sunshine, a figure that was difficult to capture with the naked eye, amazing spiritual pressure, and superb white fighting. For a while, almost the entire sky was filled with the after image of Shibuya Yorishi, who maintained the Shunhom state, and it seemed that she was firmly suppressing Senju Cheng. Exclamations came from the mouths of many Shinigami of the 13th Division of the Gotti below. Then, in the mouths of some veteran soldiers, the name of Yorishi Shioin, who had disappeared in the Seireitei for 100 years, also reappeared. The former captain of the 2nd Division and the commander-in-chief of the secret mobile, the former head of the Shioin family, the Sunshine Shioin Yorishi. Then, when Shioin Yorishi began to holloify and used the second stage of Shunhong combined with holloification, the whole person's form seemed to turn into a white cat, and the lightning that permeated his body also showed a golden light. In particular, Shioin Yorishi's spiritual pressure was increased to a level that made most of the Shinigami in the Seireitei feel depressed. Crackle. The huge increase in spiritual pressure by Shunhong and hollowification caused the sky above the Seireitei to be constantly filled with golden lightning. This amazing vision made countless Shinigami feel their pupils shrink and their palms sweat. Too strong. Is this Sunshine Yorishi? This thought subconsciously emerged in the minds of countless Shinigami, and they couldn't help but feel a longing and worship for this form legend. Shibuya Yorishi's offensive became more and more open and closed. Every attack was like several thunders exploding in the sky, and the whole Karakura town was faintly shaken. Some of Shibuya Yorishi's former subordinates were so excited that they burst into tears at this moment. They are back. They are all back. That Master Yorishi is back. He came back at the most critical moment of the Seireitei, when the captain-in-chief was suspected of being defeated and the soul-shielding membrane was broken by the hollow. However, Unohana Retsu, who was nominally protected by the captains to perform the operation, was not at all anxious at this moment. Instead, he was leisurely drinking tea in the operating room. As for treatment, what is there to treat? The body of Makoto Senju was in the operating room, but Makoto Senju himself was alive and kicking outside. Unohana Retsu was just pretending to stay in the operating room. However, a hint of displeasure flashed across Unohana Retsu's brows. Others might think that Shibuya Yorishi was risking everything to protect the Seireitei, but Unohana Retsu could still see that this was just a game between a master and a capt. To be more precise, Makoto Senju was deliberately paving the way for Shibuya Yorishi's reputation so that Shibuya Yorishi could return to the Gotti. 13 inches a reasonable way. However, when Unohana Retsu thought that the position that Makoto Senju prepared for him was the captain-in-chief, and Shibuya Yorishi was below him anyway, he raised his eyebrows slightly, and felt that the tea in his hand seemed to be much sweeter. However, compared to Unohana Retsu's leisure, Ichimura Jin, who was fighting fiercely with Kurosaki Ichigo, most of his attention was still focused on Makoto Senju. The fighting power displayed by Shibuya Yorishi at this moment really exceeded Ichimura Jin's expectations, but Ichimura Jin knew even more clearly that the mysterious number 0 was not so easy to deal with. Ichimura Jin could only hope that Shibuya Yorishi could delay for a little longer, and gain enough time to reverse the situation. However, just when Ichimura Jin thought so, when number 0 was blasted from the sky to the ground by Shibuya Yorishi, and then continued to pursue the victory, the whole person seemed to be instantly transformed into a violent thunder white cat and fell to the ground. Countless quartz-like dead trees suddenly emerged madly at the center of the position where number 0 fell. In just a moment, the quartz-like dead trees that looked like huge flowers blooming in the jingling garden from a distance swallowed Shibuya Yorishi. Immediately afterwards, more and more violent golden lightning emerged madly from the gaps of the quartz-like dead trees, indicating the intensity of the battle. Chapter 694. Preaching, Knife, Principal, severe. The battle inside the quartz-like deadwood was far more intense than the Shinigami of the 13th Gotti squad had imagined. Of course, the fact was that Makoto Senju stood there motionless, allowing Yorishi Shoin to pour down like a pile driver. Countless lightning exploded under the collision of the two sides, making a huge noise and emitting from the cracks of the quartz-like deadwood. However, perhaps Yorishi Shoin is now very strong with the advanced instant raw state combined with the hollow, and has extremely terrifying speed and destructive power. In terms of pure combat power, it is even only slightly weaker than captains like Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and Unohana Retsu. However, even if Yorishi Shoin really went all out to attack Makoto Senju for realism, the frantic fist almost turned into countless lightning after images, but it still failed to cause real damage to Makoto Senju. After a while, Senju Makoto, who felt that the time was almost right, asked Shifune and Yorishi, "Are you tired?" Huff, huff, huff. Shifune and Yorishi kept panting and said stubbornly, "How could I be tired? Isn't this just the beginning?" Senju Makoto looked down at his clothes that were torn a lot and said, "Okay, that's almost it." "Yes." Shifune and Yorishi heard this and had to agree with some reluctance. Then, Senju Makoto took a list from his arms and handed it to Shifune and Yorishi, saying, "This is your next mission target." Shifune and Yorishi took it and looked at it. There were hundreds of names listed on it, many of which were quite familiar to Shifune and Yorishi, the former captain of the 2nd Division. "I haven't done my old job for a long time. If I'm not good at it, the master won't blame me, right?" Shifune and Yorishi asked with a smile. "I believe you." Senju Makoto's calm and affirmative answer made Shifune and Yorishi's smile a little more intense, and then he replied, "In this case, as your future shadow, I have no choice but to obey your order and eliminate all these remnants, my king. Thank you for your hard work, but only you can complete this task without anyone noticing." Senju Makoto said, and almost subconsciously touched Shifune and Yorishi's head. And Shifune and Yorishi was like a cat, instinctively rubbing against Senju Makoto's palm, without any discomfort at all. "Go." As Senju Makoto spoke, countless quartz-like dead trees suddenly emerged from the ground, completely submerging Shifune and Yorishi's figure. At this moment, in the eyes of the Shinigami of the Gotti 13, the dead tree in the shape of a giant flower bud suddenly bloomed and exploded, and countless dead trees rushed into the sky from it, as if they were about to break through the soul-blocking membrane. The figure of Shifune and Yorishi was completely covered. What shocked countless Shinigami was that Shifune and Yorishi's spiritual pressure, which was like thunder, seemed to have completely sunk. They could only feel a faint spiritual pressure from the thunder that was still spreading in various places in the Seireitei, which made it difficult to determine Shifune and Yorishi's position. And Senju Makoto, who had many traces of Shifune and Yorishi's attack on his body, walked out from the dead trees. This scene made many Shinigami despair. Sunshine Yorishi, who exuded such amazing spiritual pressure, was defeated. Especially Kurosaki Ichigo and Ichimura Jin saw that number Norde's eyes turned slightly and looked at the position of the 4th Division, and their faces changed. Immediately, Kurosaki Ichigo was anxious, and he had no time to care about the specific whereabouts of Shifune and Yorishi. He moved his body and wanted to shake off Ichimura Jin and go to number Nord to prevent number Nord from approaching the position of the 4th Division. However, Ichimura Jin's eyes slightly moved. Ichimura Jin, who was quite familiar with Kurosaki Ichigo's current strength, knew that with the unfathomable power of number Naught, Kurosaki Ichigo would most likely be killed instantly. This kind of meaningless sacrifice, Ichimura Jin's thought moved, and he changed his fighting style of constantly dodging as he was forced by Kurosaki Ichigo. "Shoot him." God's gun. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was just trying to distance himself, suddenly paused. Feeling the invisible and fatal danger, he almost instinctively dodged to the side. Swoosh! A cold light flashed. It left a deep blood mark on Kurosaki Ichigo's face, and also made Kurosaki Ichigo, who inadvertently relaxed his vigilance against Ichimura Jin, sweat on his back. Just a little bit, his head might have been pierced through. "I'm so sorry, Kurosaki Ichigo, I can't let you stop number Naught." Ichimura Jin smiled and said something that sounded extremely sinister, which successfully raised Kurosaki Ichigo's inner vigilance towards Ichimura Jin. "This guy is simply a deadly venomous snake looking for an opportunity. If you are careless, you'll die." In an instant, Kurosaki Ichigo no longer cared about stopping number Naught, and instead almost subconsciously focused all his energy on Ichimura Jin. As for the battle between Ichimura Jin and Kurosaki Ichigo, Senju Makoto had a full view of the battle between Ichimura Jin and Kurosaki Ichigo, but his figure still quickly moved towards the direction of the 4th Division. As Senju Makoto approached the edge of the 4th Division's barracks, two figures blocked Senju Makoto's eyes. Zaraki fire. Here's a Jishui. I won't let you get any closer, Seireitei. Here's a Jishui, who was still wrapped in a lot of bandages, stared at Senju Makoto with a look that could be called a death gaze. This place is impassable. The answer of Zaraki was unusually brief. Boom. The next moment, a huge battle broke out again at the edge of the 4th Division's barracks, and the spirits of the entire Karakura town seemed to riot at this moment. And taking advantage of this opportunity, a cat with lightning faintly wrapped around its body, taking advantage of the amazing movement of the battle between Zaraki and Makoto Senju, almost like a series of invisible after images constantly passing through various parts of the Seireitei, and calling the roll of the list provided by Makoto Senju. When Aizen Sosop rebelled against the Seireitei, he completely destroyed the entire noble street, so that a large number of nobles including the Tsunoshiro family completely declined or disappeared. However, for Makoto Senju, it was not enough. Makoto Senju was not interested in waiting for Unohana to become the captain-in-chief. There were also various strange voices in the GOTY 13. Instead of using various political means to win over and suppress them at the time, Unohana control over the entire Seireitei was constantly consolidated. What Senju Makoto has chosen now is a more straightforward and direct method: preaching, knife, and reasoning. Lee. Chapter 695 Failed Surgery. This kind of mission is a professional match for your Rishi. The 2nd Division and the Secret Mobile Team have a very deep relationship with each other. Often, the adjutants and chief officers of the 2nd Division are also high level in the Secret Mobile Team. However, the 2nd Division and the Secret Mobile Team are not one and the same, and their positions are granted independently. The 2nd Division is under the jurisdiction of the 13th Division of the GOTY. The Secret Mobile Team is actually similar to the Kidmushu and was previously under the jurisdiction of the Central 46th Chamber. The significance of the 2nd Division is to monitor the entire GOTY 13th Division, and the significance of the Secret Mobile Team is to monitor suspicious people who pose a threat to the Central 46th Chamber and the aristocracy. In the past, Yorishishirin also cleared out many heretics among the aristocracy to safeguard the interests of the Central 46th Chamber and the entire aristocracy. I didn't expect that I would become a heretic now. Interesting, Yorishishirin said secretly, but her heart became more and more heated without her realizing it. The Seireitei and even the entire Soul Society have been at a standstill for tens of millions of years, which is really too long. For so long, Yorishishirin could not help but feel disgusted, bored, and decadent towards everything about the nobles and even the entire Seireitei. And now, perhaps a new era for the Soul Society and even the entire world, is about to begin. This makes Yorishishirin, who was born to love excitement and has a strong curiosity about all kinds of new things, almost feel addicted. As for the existence on the list, it will undoubtedly hinder the arrival of new changes. It has nothing to do with good and evil, but only with positions. Those are either diehards among the classical nobles, or they are suspected of being secretly loyal to the Zero Squad, or they are pests with a wide range of ties. These guys also emerged when Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni really began to take power not long ago, but in order to ensure the overall stability of the entire Seireitei, Yamamoto Shinigami Shichikuni chose to compromise. Now, what Shifu Yorishi needs to do is, to assassinate all those guys while the chaos is going on. Black shadows are constantly flashing from every corner of the Seireitei. With the information provided by Zaraki Fire, Shifu Yorishi can clearly see the owner of each name on the list. At this moment, Zaraki Fire is almost equivalent to Senju Makoto's eyes, and Shifu Yorishi is like Senju Makoto's black glove, secretly clearing away the last obstacle. Next, following Shifu Yorishi's perfect assassination, the aftermath caused by Zaraki Fire's constant manipulation of the spirit particles to fight will make some of the unreasonable causes of death reasonable. However, no one will notice the subtle movements and abnormalities. The battle between Aizen Sosok and Urahara Kisuke and other Shinigami outside the Seireitei, the melee between many captain-level Shinigami and three-headed vast old-level Seireitei on the soul cover and membrane, and the fierce battle inside the Seireitei where the number 0 is approaching the edge of the 4th Division, completely attracted everyone's attention. Finally, when the last noble on the list was killed by reasoning, and Zaraki Fire merged the spirit particles in the area to attack Senju Makoto, making the cause of death of this noble look extremely unexpected and unquestionable. Senju Cheng seemed to have a more determined expression under the restraint of his Ajishue Zaraki Fire at all costs, regardless of casualties. Boom. Senju Cheng withstood the attack of his Ajishue Zaraki Fire with his spirit body, but his hands controlled a large piece of quartz like dead wood and headed towards the courtyard in the center of the 4th Division. In an instant, Senju Cheng seemed to be seriously injured by his Ajishue Zaraki Fire, but the large piece of quartz like dead wood completely submerged the entire courtyard. This scene made many Shinigami look dazed. The entire courtyard was completely submerged by the quartz-like deadwood, and Unohana, who was in it, how could he continue to perform the critical operation on Vice Captain Senju? The next moment, in the center of the courtyard, a blood-colored spiritual pressure rose to the sky. Shwa! A large piece of extremely hard deadwood was completely turned into powder under the extreme knife light, and Unohana, with his hair scattered, slowly walked out of the courtyard. However, Unohana's murderous eyes full of anger, despair, and hatred made the death gods realize a possibility. Unohana, Captain Unohana, hand, surgery. His Ajishue's pupils were dilated, and the last few words clearly surged up his throat, but he felt that he had no strength to say them. Unohana lowered his head slightly, and after a moment, he spoke under the gaze of everyone. Failed. At the most critical moment, failed. In an instant, his Ajishue, Ichimura Jin, Kurosaki Ichigo and other death gods who understood where the hope was, felt a chill in their hearts, and despair arose spontaneously. And the next moment, Unohana's faintly blood-red eyes stared at the position of number 0. In just a moment, Unohana crossed a very long distance and appeared in front of Senju Cheng, bursting out with an indescribable terrifying killing intent. I want you to die. Suddenly, the no. Nord, who was almost invincible in the entire Gotti 13, was blown away at the moment of forcibly withstanding Unohana's attack. Immediately afterwards, Unohana's bloody spiritual pressure completely burst out, filling the entire Seireitei, so that even the Shinigami and Seireitei who were on the soul-blocking membrane tightened their nerves and instinctively felt fear. This has nothing to do with strength, it is completely the instinctive reaction of normal creatures when facing an absolute executioner. And this executioner seems to have completely gone berserk. Countless sword techniques that dazzled the Shinigami and were extremely mysterious were easily mastered by Unohana, forcing the no. Nord, who swept through the Seireitei to retreat step by step, completely at a disadvantage. So strong. The bloody figure of the Valkyria, the figure that danced and reversed in the desperate situation that no one in the jingling court could defeat, at this moment, was like a brand that was completely imprinted in the eyes of ordinary death gods. And the situation of number 0 seemed to be getting more and more dangerous. All resistance was useless under the knife of Unohana, and there were even several deep wounds on his body that could be seen to the bone. Don't think you can beat me like this, death god. Suddenly, number 0 seemed to be exasperated and said, and suddenly a bright golden light appeared on his body, and an abrupt outline appeared on number 0's chest. It was the King's Seal. Chapter 696, The Last Hope, the Royal Seal. That light was undoubtedly very familiar to the 13th Gotti squad. Not long ago, a huge battle broke out in the Seireitei because the Royal Seal was stolen. The source of that battle was that it was the power of the Royal Seal that resurrected Kusanagi Sojiro and created the Soul Kinko. In an instant, it seemed that due to the power of the Royal Seal, the body of number 0, which was originally no doubt human, changed rapidly. Not only did the part that was cut by Unohana recover as before, but endless quartz-like deadwood burst out from his body and spread in all directions. Boom. The entire Seireitei was shaking. In just a few breaths, the position where number 0 was located was replaced by a giant deadwood, and it continued to grow wildly in all directions until it hit the soul-blocking membrane. Bang. In the end, in the horrified eyes of countless death gods, the entire soul-blocking membrane was actually broken abruptly, and then completely shattered with a dull sound. At this moment, the concepts of the Shinigami of the 13th Gotti squad seemed to have been greatly impacted. The sacred and solemn place of the Seireitei, which seemed to be taken for granted in their concepts, as the soul-blocking membrane was shattered by a hollow, it seemed as if the sacred and solemn place of the Seireitei was also completely defiled. This astonishing scene also made number 0, who had transformed into a giant tree supporting the sky, completely the center of the entire battlefield. Even the Seireitei captains who were originally fighting fiercely outside the soul-blocking membrane stopped subconsciously. Wow, this size is really incredible. Could this be number 0's body? Stark said with a smack of his lips. It's terrifying spiritual pressure. Ulquiorra said. Only Bilajum said with a bit of disdain in his tone. Humph, in ancient times there were supergiant hollows larger than this. Size doesn't mean anything. In this regard, Stark and Ulquiorra were not interested in arguing with Bilajum, but continued to pay attention to the movements of number naught. At this moment, the canopy of the dead tree transformed by number naught has almost covered the entire Seireitei. The roots supporting the trunk have spread so far on the ground that the entire Seireitei is shaking continuously. The shocking and terrifying vision can be seen from afar even by residents of the remotest Cheng-ge. It is as if the entire Seireitei is just a potted plant containing the dead tree. The next moment, Senju Cheng's voice, which seems to be without any emotion, rang out from within the dead tree and said, "In that case, I will completely destroy the entire Seireitei." Almost as soon as Senju Cheng finished speaking, a large number of cracks began to appear on the ground of Seireitei. Thick tree roots emerged from the ground and destroyed the team houses one by one. The tree canopy that covered the entire Seireitei also drooped branches. No, perhaps compared to the supergiant dead tree incarnated by number naught, it was just a branch, but in fact each branch was almost as big as the Bankai. Heavenly punishment Black Road Myoku. Boom. In less than a few breaths, number naught's almost indiscriminate attack and rampage made the entire Seireitei seem to fall into the brink of destruction. A large number of the 13th Gotti Shinigami subconsciously gathered together to destroy or resist the tree roots or branches that continued to destroy Seireitei. However, in front of the branches that were comparable to the size of Heavenly Punishment Black Road Myoku, the size of the Shinigami was not much different from that of ants. The various forms of Shikai or the joint release of Pado, the damage that can be caused to those roots or branches of astonishing size is undoubtedly quite limited. More Shinigami, looking at the almost hellish scene in the Seireitei, fell into collapse and despair, and had no motivation to resist at all. Is this really an enemy we can deal with? In such a desperate and urgent moment, Unohana, who was placed the last bit of hope by many Shinigami, did not move, but stared at the king's seal that was still shining somewhere on the tree trunk. That's hope. Suddenly, Unohana made a voice with a hint of excitement and enlightenment, and pointed the zanpakutō in his hand directly in the direction of the king's seal and shouted loudly, "Take back the king's seal." In an instant, except for some captains, even Ichimura-jin paused and instantly realized what Unohana meant. That's right, that is definitely the last hope. At the same time, this is also the last hope that Senju Cheng can convince everyone for his own resurrection. It is true that Unohana's Uedo and medical skills are outstanding in the entire Seireitei, but once the Zero Division investigates the entire resurrection process, even if Unohana was the faker, it will definitely not withstand the investigation and scrutiny of Korinji Tenshiro, the captain of the first 4 divisions in the Zero Division and the one who taught Uedo to Unohana. Only the King's Seal that has the power to resurrect others and has demonstrated this ability once on Kusanagi Sojiro not long ago can make everyone subconsciously convinced. Almost as soon as Unohana finished speaking, Hisagishue took the lead and rushed madly in the direction of the King's Seal. A series of tree roots that were like natural moats suddenly crisscrossed and blocked Hisagishue in front of him, preventing Hisagishue from approaching the tree trunk where the King's Seal was located. However, the tree roots that had caused countless soldiers to despair and wait for death could not shake Hisagishue's will in the slightest. For Master Senju, don't get in my way. With a hysterical roar, the wind death in Hisagishue's hand spun wildly at an extreme speed that was unimaginable in the past, and it rushed towards the tree roots without hesitation, just like a whirlwind of blades. Boom 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 boom. As Hisagishue continued to advance frantically, he felt as if he were in a freezing winter night without realizing it. His limbs seemed to be frozen and he gradually lost consciousness. Strength, exhausted? No. Give me a little more strength. As the last root blocking the tree trunk was torn apart, he watched the tree trunk shining with the light of the King's Seal right in front of him, but he was almost out of breath. Chapter 697. Bankai God-Killing Spear. Chapter 697. Bankai God-Killing Spear. If you don't have the strength to breathe, then just hold your breath. Hisagishue stared at the light of the King's Seal and squeezed every bit of strength his spirit could squeeze out. It's already here. However, no matter how strong Hisagishue's will was, his spirit, which had reached its limit, could not continue to respond to that will. When Hisagishue tried to raise his hand to control the wind death and chop at the tree trunk again, the clear sound of his arm bone cracking reached Hisagishue's ears. And it was because of his injuries, purely, just exhausted to the extreme. First, the duel with Grim Zhao, and then the continuous delay to contain Yu Lu's Liu, only had time to treat the injury for a moment, and then tried desperately to stop Naught. These extreme battles had already made Hisagishue's spirit exceed the limit many times to the point where it could not bear it. That is to say, Hisagishue had been transformed by Senju Cheng in the form of spirit superposition, otherwise Hisagishue would not have suffered a bone fracture, but his spirit would have collapsed and died on the spot. Just as Hisagishue's pupils shrank, revealing a strong unwillingness, the voice of Seireitei rang in Hisagishue's ears. "Captain Hisagis, you did a great job, and the next, leave it to me." The next moment, countless spirit particles gathered and transformed into a supergiant zanpakutō that spanned the sky, and then slashed towards the tree trunk along the path torn open by Hisagishue. In an instant, as the supergiant zanpakutō fell, the death god who witnessed this scene only felt that a shadow covering the sky of the sun fell from above his head, and inexplicably a glimmer of hope sprouted in his heart. This seemed to be the supergiant zanpakutō that allowed Seireitei to reach the limit of controlling spirit particles. With the size comparison between the tree trunk and the zanpakutō, it was undoubtedly possible to cut the tree trunk. Go. At this moment, a large number of Shinigami witnessed the collision of the two giants from afar, and with a little hope in their hearts, they couldn't help but shout instinctively. To seize the last possibility of victory, the King's Seal. However, at the moment when the supergiant zanpakutō was about to cut the tree trunk, more than a dozen branches suddenly rushed out from the tree canopy, blocking, entangled, or hit. Several branches comparable to the size of the heavenly punishment Black Road Myung were cut off in an instant, but this momentary delay also bought enough time for the remaining branches, greatly reducing the force of the supergiant zanpakutō slash. Boom. At the same time as a loud noise, a ring-shaped airwave surged in all directions. However, a large number of Shinigami witnessed the result of this slash, and their hearts couldn't help but tighten. That supergiant zanpakutō only cut a hole in the tree trunk. Perhaps, the hole was big enough to fit several houses, but compared to the terrifying size of the tree trunk, it was just a small wound. Instead, as the supergiant zanpakutō was entangled by a large number of branches one after another, the terrifying strangling force almost caused the supergiant zanpakutō to show signs of collapse with the naked eye. It's over. As expected, and it still doesn't work. A large number of Shinigami had a noticeable grayness on their faces. However, at this moment, the world seemed to be suddenly dyed red by a blood-colored and Bankai all-ending Unohana appeared in the hole on the dead tree trunk at some point, and this time, after Unohana Bankai, he did not open up the all-ending space, but instead mattly spread the countless blood colors in all directions. Unohana spiritual pressure also really soared to the extreme after his Bankai. Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni, who was comparable to the Zanpakutō in his state, truly had the pinnacle of spiritual pressure among the Shinigami. The next moment, the seemingly insignificant Unohana seemed to have transformed into a brightly blooming Unohana in the endless blood. 8,000 flows secret art. All destroyed cut. Suddenly, the blood that burst out from Unohana seemed to have turned into a knife at this moment, and the tree trunk even had a bloodline along the original small cut at a speed visible to the naked eye, and then, split. From a distance, it looked as if Unohana, who was as small as an ant, was waving a blade of grass to cut off the tree that supported the sky. This scene captured the hearts of countless Shinigami. They were not shocked or excited. Their minds were almost blank as they subconsciously stared at the bloodline that kept approaching the King's Seal, watching the unimaginable miracle. Closer. Closer. Under the gaze of countless death gods, compared to the exaggerated size of the dead tree trunk, the distance between the bloodline and the King's Seal has reached the point of being within reach, and it can even be said that it is only a layer of membrane away. As long as the membrane is pierced, the King's Seal will be touched and taken back. That last hope is about to be truly grasped. The bloodline slowed down at a speed visible to the naked eye. Wherever the bloodline passed, a huge hole was formed. From a distance, Unohana used his zanpakutō to cut the dead tree trunk that enveloped the entire Seireitei in half, and even the terrifying dead tree looked faintly shaky. However, the bloodline stopped completely, and it did not really intersect with the light of the King's Seal. In contrast, a large number of branches rushed in frantically along the hole cut by the bloodline, and approached the position where Unohana was. Moreover, it seemed that under the power of the King's Seal, the huge gap that had been cut had begun to repair itself at a speed visible to the naked eye. Without a doubt, this was the only chance. With the branches blocking it, Unohana would never be able to swing the knife a second time. Unwilling, desperate, angry, these emotions surged uncontrollably in the hearts of countless Shinigami who witnessed this scene. Obviously, it was just a little bit away. No. Seireitei, who had already collapsed to the ground, could not help but roar. Just a little bit away, just a little bit of distance. However, although the other captain-level Shinigami were also trying their best to get closer to the dead tree, they simply did not have time to cross the long distance. The captain-level Shinigami closest to the dead tree were only Unohana, Seireitei, and Seireitei. At this moment, that should be the same position as number 0. Unnoticed, Ichimura Jin approached the gap in the tree trunk and slowly opened his squinting eyes. The blue eyes that had been praised many times by Senju Cheng burst into unprecedented brilliance. Bankai! God-killing spear. The next moment, a white thread flashed from the gap cut by Unohana and penetrated the entire tree trunk. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 698. A response across a century. At the moment when Bankai God-killing gun was released, countless thoughts flashed through Jin Ichimura's mind, but he did not hesitate. After hundreds of years of lurking, and all kinds of inhuman tests and sufferings, Jin Ichimura originally thought that what he was waiting for was a blow that would destroy Aizen Sasuke and take back the lost soul of Matsumoto Ranger Aikyu. After releasing this blow under the gaze of countless Shinigami and Seireitei, Jin Ichimura knew that his lurking career was completely over. At this moment, countless Shinigami who had already unknowingly sunk into the abyss looked at Jin Ichimura in shock, who was supposed to be a loyal follower of Aizen Sasuke. Those Seireitei looked at Jin Ichimura's actions in disbelief. With Jin Ichimura's independence from the 10 Espadas in the Huko Night Palace, and as the only Shinigami subordinate of Aizen Sasuke, Jin Ichimura undoubtedly enjoyed a position of being second to none in the huge Huko Mundo. Once Aizen Sasuke wins the final victory of the war, the benefits that Ichimura Jin can get are completely unimaginable. Why? Ichimura Jin actually became the last ray of light at the moment when the Seireitei was completely desperate. However, Ichimura Jin did not regret it, nor did he hesitate at all. Perhaps, this is the duty given to him by fate. Across 100 years, to respond to the kindness of that adult, the blood in his heart is constantly boiling, and Ichimura Jin, who has always acted like a cold-blooded animal watching everything, under the powerful spiritual pressure, his hair flew up, revealing a pair of beautiful eyes in front of the world, blue eyes full of burning and tenderness, and the roaring voice echoed in the Seireitei. "Wake up, Master Senju." The white silk that penetrated the dead tree trunk did not stop, but continued to extend towards the direction of the 4th Division at the angle that Ichimura Jin had already expected. At the top of that white silk, there was the dazzling gold that represented the King's Seal. Direction is the courtyard that has been submerged by a large number of dead trees. The soul of Master Senju, the spirit of Master Senju, are all in that courtyard. As long as the King's Seal can reach that place, the miracle called hope will definitely appear. After the King's Seal was taken away by Ichimura Jin, the incarnation of number 0 continued to destroy the dead trees in the jingling courtyard, and collapsed rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, before that, there were still a large number of branches that were like number 0's last struggle, madly continuing to chase the King's Seal that was pushed forward by the god-killing spear. It showed the performance of a terrifying great hollow on the verge of death and collapsed to the fullest. The branches that were comparable to the size of the Black Road Heavenly Punishment Min Wang, chasing and blocking the god-killing spear that was extending at a terrifying speed, seemed to only take a moment to forcibly take back the King's Seal. Don't even think about it. At this moment that seemed to change the future, the blood-colored zanpakutō in Unohana's hand, which had already reacted, turned upside down, and instantly formed a blood-like all-encompassing space that enveloped the rapidly collapsing main part of the dead tree, completely isolating it from the outside world. Suddenly, the branches that were chasing and blocking the god-killing spear stopped, leaving a tiny gap that led directly to the 4th Division. Under the hopeful gaze of countless death gods, the god-killing spear used the last remaining strength to break through the dead tree trunk, and in an instant, with the King's Seal, it passed through the gap and entered the courtyard in the center of the 4th Division's barracks. And when the King's Seal entered the courtyard, it seemed to be stimulated by something, and a golden light shone. At the same time, the all-encompassing barrier that lasted less than a few breaths was lifted, and Unohana Retsu, holding the blood blade, reappeared in front of everyone as a winner. Number 0, who had swept away many captain-level Shinigami and destroyed the Seireitei in an instant, had already regained his human form. However, there was an extra fatal wound on Number 0's chest. As expected of the first-generation Kinpachi, who was more threatening than Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni and Aizen Kumzai's, he is really amazing. Number 0 said this slowly in front of many Shinigami, and his body quickly dissipated into spirit particles just like the hollows when they were destroyed by the Shinigami, as if he had returned to the world. In an instant, countless Shinigami felt a shock. Number 0 was destroyed by Lord Unohana Retsu. Even though this was due to the fact that Ichimura-jin had taken away the king's seal from Number 0's body, the monster like Number 0 who was rampant in the Seireitei and swept away the invincible was defeated by Unohana Retsu. This undoubtedly made Unohana Retsu's prestige in the Seireitei soar to an extremely high level in an instant. Furthermore, after leaving the human world, the news that Unohana Retsu was one of the first captains who founded the Gotti 13 and the first Kinpachi began to spread in the Seireitei. Suddenly, all the news, deeds, and prestige about Unohana Retsu in the past were like seeds, which blossomed and bore fruit. When the Gotti 13 was defeated by Yamamoto Seireitei Shichikuni, and the situation was about to go, Unohana Retsu completely became the backbone of countless Shinigami. However, at this moment, a spiritual pressure more terrifying than Number 0 descended into the Seireitei, like an abyss and a prison, making all the Shinigami's consciousness confused. Then, a figure appeared in the sky above the Seireitei. Stark, Byakugan, and Ulquiorra, who were the first to react, quickly knelt on one knee towards the figure, somewhat terrified by the terrifying spiritual pressure that faintly revealed a bit of anger on the figure. Lord Aizen. Aizen Sasuke ignored what Stark, Byakugan and Ulquiorra said. His extremely arrogant expression was filled with a hint of sadness and anger as he looked at the direction where no Nord fell. Then, Aizen Sasuke's voice echoed in the Seireitei. You dared to kill Katanri-kun. I will make you pay the price. Almost as soon as Aizen Sasuke's word fell, Aizen Sasuke threw the two figures that were dragging on his hands and drooping down. Kinpachi Zaraki. Kisuke Uehara. Until this moment, everyone turned their attention away from Aizen Sasuke and noticed that the two figures that Aizen Sasuke had thrown down were Kisuke Uehara and Kinpachi Zaraki. However, at this moment, Kinpachi Zaraki and Kisuke Uehara seemed to have fallen into a coma near death, with several horrifying wounds on their bodies. Hurry up and save them. Just as some Shinigami reacted, they hurriedly tried to catch Uehara, Kisuke and Zaraki Kinpachi, who were thrown away by Aizen Sasuke. Chapter 699. Desperate Mirror Flower and Water Moon. This is considered interest. Suddenly, Aizen Sasuke swung the zanpakutō in his hand at the fallen spirits of Uehara, Kisuke and Zaraki Kinpachi from a distance. Boom. In an instant, a slash formed by compressed spiritual pressure that was countless times more exaggerated than Kuroseki Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho fell towards Uehara, Kisuke and Zaraki Kinpachi at the same time. In the blink of an eye, the amazing slash was about to drown Uehara, Kisuke and Zaraki Kinpachi at the same time. Unohana Retsu's figure suddenly appeared in front of Zaraki Kinpachi, and he slashed away all at once. Zzzzzzz. A sound that made people's teeth ache sounded. In the end, Unohana Retsu's figure was pressed back by the slash for more than 10 meters, which offset the exaggerated blow and barely saved Zaraki Kinpachi, who had fainted and looked like a bloody man. However, on the other side, Uehara Kisuke was not so lucky. In the current Gotti 13, the only one who could possibly block Aizen Sasuke's slash, Unohana Retsu, chose to rescue Kinpachi Zaraki, and no one had time to save Uehara Kisuke. A blow passed by, Uehara Kisuke's figure was completely annihilated in the air. However, compared to the sacrifice of this former captain who was somewhat unknown in the history of the Seireitei, the Shinigami were in an absolute crisis again, and they had no time to remember Uehara Kisuke. Unohana Retsu. Aizen Sasuke looked down at Unohana Retsu, who blocked the blow, and said, reciting the name word by word. You took away my cherished friend, and I will make you pay for it. At this moment, everyone inexplicably read two words from Aizen Sasuke's tone: pain. The emotions that seemed to truly arise from the depths of his heart, the pain and anger for the cherished friend being taken away by Unohana Retsu. At this moment, Unohana Retsu faced the astonishing pressure from Aizen Sasuke, but he did not retreat at all. He pointed the Jirijin in his hand and spoke with murderous intent. I'm sorry, I will protect the Seireitei this time. You? There seemed to be a hint of contempt in Aizen Sasuke's tone. The next moment, Unohana Retsu took the initiative to go towards Aizen Sasuke. The posture that seemed to be covered with a layer of blood turned into the most reliable back in the eyes of countless Shinigami. Dang! The moment the Jirijin collided with Jin Wushuyu, the harsh sound echoed throughout the Seireitei, and a visible airwave suddenly swept across the sky above the Seireitei. Then, Unohana Retsu demonstrated a level of kendo that surpassed what ordinary Shinigami could imagine. After several encounters, although Unohana Retsu's spiritual pressure was far lower than Aizen Sasuke's, he relied on his unimaginable swordsmanship level to suppress Aizen Sasuke. At this moment, countless Shinigami's eyes had light. Captain Unohana Retsu is too strong. Although he had witnessed Unohana Retsu's attack that almost cut off more than half of the dead tree trunk transformed by Number Naught, and personally defeated Number Naught who swept many captains. However, that was still far less intuitive than suppressing Aizen Sasuke in front of him. Captain General Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni was defeated by Aizen Sasuke, and was defeated by Aizen Sasuke one after another, but now he is being steadily suppressed by Captain Unohana. Suddenly, an absurd thought emerged in the hearts of many Shinigami. Perhaps, the reason why Captain Unohana, the first-generation Kenpachi, served as the captain of the 4th Division was simply because he was too strong. In order to avoid the younger generations from being hit, he chose this way to silently contribute to the Seireitei. Now, seeing that the Seireitei was in a critical situation, Captain Unohana had to stand up and no longer hide his strength that was unrivaled in the Seireitei. For a while, in the eyes of countless Shinigami, Unohana Retsu's image became taller and taller, and those eyes couldn't help but reveal a longing light. The next moment, the blood blade of all destruction passed through Aizen Sasuke's chest, instantly splitting Aizen Sasuke's spirit into two. Just as many Shinigami who witnessed this scene subconsciously rejoiced and even cheered. Aizen Sasuke, who was cut into two pieces, turned into a phantom and dissipated into the air. Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Suddenly, everyone realized that the scene they had just seen was just an illusion. Then, Aizen Sasuke disappeared from everyone's sight, and his voice echoed in the Seireitei. What a pity, were you happy about defeating me just now, Captain Unohana? Unohana Retsu did not answer, but just took a defensive kendo stance, carefully looking left and right. It's meaningless, Captain Unohana. Although Captain Unohana's combat power is undoubtedly above the top of the God of Death, in terms of pure kendo level, you are definitely the strongest. Aizen Sasuke first commented in a calm tone, then changed his tone and said, unfortunately, all this has no meaning in front of the Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Those who cannot see through the Mirror Flower and Water Moon do not even have the qualifications to stand in front of me, so how can they touch my body with the blade? Therefore, as the price of taking away my friend, Captain Unohana, please go to hell to apologize to him. At the end, Aizen Sasuke's tone revealed a trace of undisguised killing intent. This also made countless Shinigami who heard this sentence feel tight in their hearts. Even if it is a powerful Shinigami, how can it win such a completely unequal battle? And it seems that all the Shinigami are intentionally allowed to witness the death of Unohana Retsu with their own eyes. The Shinigami only felt that the picture in their eyes turned, and Aizen Sasuke's figure had appeared 10 meters behind Unohana Retsu. However, Unohana Retsu was always unaware of it, ignoring the existence of Aizen Sasuke, and still maintained a defensive kendo posture. Then, Aizen Sasuke walked towards Unohana Retsu step by step. For a moment, countless Shinigami couldn't help but shout desperately at Unohana Retsu, trying to remind Aizen Sasuke of his actions, but the sound seemed to be blocked by the power of Kagami Suigetsu, and couldn't reach Unohana Retsu's ears at all. The captain-level Shinigami who couldn't help but try to stop Aizen Sasuke were also stopped by Stark and other Arensei. Until Aizen Sasuke stopped behind Unohana Retsu, raised Kagami Suigetsu high and aimed it at Unohana Retsu's neck, who had unknowingly become the spiritual pillar of many Shinigami. Countless Shinigami who witnessed this scene were furious, desperate. It was difficult to breathe, but they were powerless. Chapter 700 Returning, still a teenager. This moment is like the darkest moment in the history of the Seireitei for thousands of years. The God of Death who once played with the entire Seireitei and betrayed the 13th Gotti squad, Aizen Sasuke, first defeated the large army led by the Captain General Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni in the present world. Then, he invaded the Soul Society with a condescending attitude. Now, he is deliberately publicly executing Captain Unohana, who has become the spiritual pillar of many God of Death, and beheaded Captain Unohana in front of countless God of Death. that extreme arrogance, that extreme contempt, that extreme madness, let all the god of death who witnessed this scene feel deeply powerless and desperate. Anyone is fine. Just when Aizen Sasuke had already raised the mirror flower and walked a moon behind Unohana Retsu, I don't know which god of death whose will was completely collapsed screamed and shouted. Save Soul Society. However, the world's operation and the tide of the times will not stop for a god of death who is powerless to shout. Mirror flower water moon, cut down. At this moment, a figure that seemed to be carrying golden light cut through the long rainbow. Boom. A loud sound that seemed to break through the air was slowly transmitted to everyone's ears. And that golden light finally stopped behind Unohana Retsu. When everyone came to their senses, they noticed that the mirror flower water moon in Aizen Sasuke's hand was blocked, not by the zanpakutō, but by a seemingly slender and white hand holding the blade and stopping in mid-air. The golden light slowly dissipated. It was a gentle and familiar back to many god of death. Then, a breeze blew, rolling up the simple white shirt that should have been worn by the god of death, and the bands that slightly covered the face. A young man who seemed to be confused, handsome and gentle came into everyone's eyes. At this moment, the legend who had disappeared from the eyes of all the Shinigami for decades returned with a similar posture to that of a young man. How is it possible? Vice Captain Senju, is it really Vice Captain Senju? The legendary has actually revived. You are finally back. In an instant, the faces of many Shinigami who knew about Makoto Senju were full of ecstasy and disbelief. As for the Shinigami who joined the Gotti 13 inches the past few decades, they were shocked to see Makoto Senju holding Kagami Suigetsu's hand. Kagami Suigetsu, who defeated Captain General Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni and left the captains helpless, actually blocked it with his palm. And Aizen Sasuke also showed an incomprehensible look on his face, and shouted with a little more incomprehension in his voice. How is it possible? You are really alive? Captain Aizen? Makoto Senju looked at Aizen Sasuke for a few times, as if he was a sleeping person who had just woken up from a long time ago, and asked with some confusion. What's wrong with your current form? You're actually planning to attack Unohana teacher? Unohana Retsu, who was deeply trapped in the power of Kagami Suigetsu and was unaware of the existence of Aizen Sasuke, seemed to see Makoto Senju who was independent of the illusion when he turned around. For a moment, Unohana Retsu's bloody murderous intent suddenly dissipated, and his sharp eyes were filled with tears, and he spoke in tears. Makoto? Is it an illusion? Makoto Senju turned to look at Unohana Retsu, smiled gently, and asked. Teacher, it's me, something seems to have happened, did I bother you? Then, Unohana Retsu, who was originally unable to control his emotions, suddenly realized something and spoke quickly. Makoto. Be careful. Aizen Sasuke is an enemy, a criminal who betrayed Soul Society and attacked the Seireitei. The real ability of his zanpakutō Suigetsu was complete hypnosis, which can perfectly manipulate and dominate the perception of all people trapped in the ability. In addition, Aizen Sasuke created a substance called Hogyoku, which greatly evolved his own spiritual level and zanpakutō ability. Many captains, including Captain General Yamamoto, have been defeated by him. Suddenly, Senju Makoto's expression became serious, and then he looked at Aizen Sasuke in front of him again, and asked with a more solemn tone. Captain Aizen, is what Unohana teacher said true? Have you really come to this point? Unohana Retsu heard this, frowned, and asked. Makoto, what? Can you see the location of Aizen Sasuke? Yes, that's right. Senju Makoto's voice not only reached Unohana Retsu's ears, but also faintly floated into the surrounding Shinigami, saying, in the expeditionary force of Hukomundo, I unexpectedly discovered the true zanpakutō power of Captain Aizen, and due to some special accidents, I became immune to Captain Aizen's zanpakutō power. After a pause, Senju Makoto continued. Unohana-sensei, please step back a little. As for the battle, I'm willing to do it for you. What's more, Captain Aizen actually destroyed the Seireitei in this way, which is simply unforgivable. Unohana Retsu heard this, hesitated for a moment, said be careful, and then quickly stepped back to make way for Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke. However, Unohana Retsu had just retreated to the area where the captains such as Kachikabukai were. Kachikabukai immediately questioned and said, Captain Unohana, why do you want to withdraw from the battlefield? Since Makoto-kun has the ability to see through the mirror flower and the water moon, then we should cooperate with Makoto-kun to surround and kill Aizen Sasuke. If Makao fights Aizen Sasuke alone, there is no doubt. However, before Byakuya Kuchika finished speaking, Unohana raised his hand to interrupt and said, "Captain Kuchika, if we join the battle, we will only become an obstacle to Makao. Now the only one who can defeat Aizen Sasuke is Makao, who can ignore the interference of the Mirror Flower and the Water Moon. So, what we can do now, besides avoiding becoming a burden to Makao in the battle, is to believe in Makao." Upon hearing this, the death gods such as Byakuya Kuchika, Jin Ichimura, and Shuei Hisaji showed a trace of unwillingness on their faces, but they had to admit this cruel fact. Even if there is no Mirror Flower and the Water Moon, the gap in strength between them and Aizen Sasuke is still a huge difference. However, Jin Ichimura, who witnessed many battles of Aizen Sasuke, couldn't help but speak. But even Captain General Yamamoto couldn't do anything to Aizen Sasuke. "If it's just Senju-sama, don't worry, Captain Ichimura." As if he understood Ichimura Jin's position, Unohana was the first to change the way he addressed Ichimura Jin and said, "Just watch carefully. Makao at this moment may be stronger than any of us." End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.